Disclaimer. I do not claim ownership of this story. All rights belong to the original creators. Title: I'm drawing manga in Naruto. Page 41. There was a large crowd gathered over there. Shinyue hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she didn't go over. At this moment, Akabane's clone was finished drawing. Big brother, who is he? A child stepped forward and asked with great curiosity. Nagato. The clone smiled slightly and took down the completed drawing. Take it and hang it up. Before it was even hung up, everyone rushed inside, only to be met with a view of the person in the painting. The painting depicts a boy of about 7 or 8 years old, with red hair and long bangs covering one eye. He doesn't have the Rinnegan, but he's still handsome and refined. The Uzumaki clan, being descendants of the Sage of Six Paths, might have some understanding of the Rinnegan, while the Kurama clan is unlikely to possess such records, making it inexplicable if they were to draw them. The third generation was a shrewd individual, even more difficult to conceal than Danzo in some ways, and Akabane didn't want to court death. Next, I will draw a picture for one of the children here. This little girl has a comic book in her hand, so I've decided on you. The clone circled around, looked at Uzumaki Saigetsu, and then took out a new sheet of paper to start drawing. The little girl stared in astonishment at the clone, then turned to look at Akabane, who had used a transformation technique. A small gift. Akabane smiled gently. Since it was his clone who did the work, he was happy to see it happen. The little girl nodded, stood up straight nervously, afraid that she would look bad. With each stroke, the doppelganger quickly sketched the shape. Before long, the basic image of the little girl appeared on the paper. The children were all captivated by the drawing, allowing Akabane to rest peacefully. However, seeing the clone surrounded by a dozen little girls with adoring expressions, and that beaming smile. Ha, Lelekan! Akabane lay on the carriage, a cold smile playing on his lips. After a moment of sarcasm, he suddenly realized something was wrong. His clone was a Lelekan, so what was he? No, I only like well-behaved, considerate, and caring lolas like Shinyue. Akabane nodded to himself, trying to reassure himself. At this moment, Shinyue's chibi portrait was completed. After blowing the ink off the paper, the clone handed it to Shinyue. Shinyue, let me see. I want to see too. Don't break it, be careful. A group of children swarmed over instantly. The chibi-style portrait was very cute, and the person in the painting bore a resemblance to Shinyue. It really is a portrait. Everyone was instantly stunned. Although there are photographs in this world, comics are appearing for the first time in Akabane's hands. These children are seeing themselves drawn in comics for the first time. Big brother, if I buy a comic book, will you draw it for me too? The children were immediately interested. The caravan's guard's eyes lit up. This was undoubtedly a very good way to promote the business. But then they looked at Akabane and his clone. Akabane is practically a boss, while they are just his subordinates. The clone hesitated. How much work would it take to draw one for every child? But of course I do. Akabane sat up from the car and smiled slightly. What? The shadow clone was stunned, then saw the children rush into the shop with great joy. Within seconds, everyone had run out. However, they had no money, and one by one they took the books and ran out, showing no intention of paying. Akabane frowned slightly. He doesn't care about money, but doesn't that seem a bit excessive? Just as he was about to ask, the little girl whispered, Brother Akabane, don't worry, the uncles and aunties will come and pay. Are these all the children in your village? Akabane nodded to indicate that he understood, and then casually asked a question. Pretty much, there aren't many children in our clan. She carefully put away the chibi-style portrait while answering questions. The population isn't large. Akabane thought about it and understood what was going on. The Whirlpool clan is physically strong and engages in intra-clan marriage, resulting in a rather low offspring rate. Let's label everyone's comics in order, and then we'll draw whoever's turn it is first. The clone said helplessly. So many people, it's exhausting. That's a trap for clones. His short lifespan as an alternate entity will probably be entirely devoted to drawing chibi-style portraits of children. Konoha Village, Manga Shop. Uncle Yunlang, there's no need to unload the goods, just give us one copy. Exactly, since Akabane isn't here, there are no posters to give out. Hurry up, we're in a hurry to exercise. Before the comics were even loaded onto the shelves, a crowd of people had already flocked to the truck, wanting to grab one directly from the truck. Isn't this bad? Kurama Yunlang hesitated, and in the time it took to hesitate, a bunch of 100 yuan bills were thrown on the table, and then each of his friends left with one. People are already here, there's no time to wait for him to load the goods. Sakumo, your son is quite the player, completely different from you. Zishao walked and looked around, casually making a comment. As an elite jonin, Kakashi's methods were simply toying with these three kids who weren't even genin. He is not my son. Shuo Mao retorted. Head, don't be so sure of yourself. If you're so stubborn now, what if you actually have a son and name him Kakashi? Wouldn't that be incredibly embarrassing? I would never choose such a terrible name. Shuo Mao persisted once again. Although he was talking to Zishao, he was reading the comic book quite quickly, and soon he had turned to chapter 8. With this chapter, the test for class 7 is considered over. A ninja is a group. Ha, Akabane himself doesn't do that. They both sneered at the same time. As teammates, they knew Akabane better than the others. Akabane would never miss an opportunity to slack off. There were only a handful of people in the entire Hidden Leaf village who could control him. I'm more curious about Kirigakure. Seeing the two minor mist ninja, Sakumo's mood became somewhat somber. The ninjas of Kirigakure are skilled in assassination, and their clan swordsmanship also leans towards assassination. If he could have participated in the War of the Land of Whirlpools, his strength might have improved greatly, but unfortunately, in order to complete the mission, he had to return. There will be a chance. The battle in the Land of Whirlpools won't end so easily. Zishao comforted her softly. According to his speculation, the turmoil in the Land of Whirlpools might last for a very long time. I hope so. I really want to learn their assassination techniques. Sakumo said something, then closed the comic book. However, at that moment, a voice entered my ears. Lord Danzo has ordered you to go to the Land of Waves to purge and incorporate the rogue ninja there. The country of waves. Shuomao and Zishao were slightly surprised. Wasn't this the small country mentioned in the Akabane manga? That's right. When you go this time, you must not reveal your identity as Konoha ninjas. Your main focus should be on hiding and protecting yourselves. These are also Lord Danzo's original words. The ANBU ninja continued. We cannot reveal our identity as Konoha ninjas. In other words, if we are discovered, we must kill them. Zishao took a deep breath and said, Yes. After saying this, Anran formed a hand seal and instantly disappeared. Chapter 50 The Child of Destiny? Ha! When Kazama Sato returned from his promotional tour and saw that half of the manga had been sold, his face beamed like a chrysanthemum. As for money, he wasn't worried. Wachao Village is only so big, if someone takes a comic book, their parents will inevitably come and pay them. Even though Kazama Sasuke transported the book from Konoha, increasing the price by 20 taels, the total price of 120 taels per book was still not expensive. You have to give me a sufficient commission for this promotion. Akabane said in a low voice, Do you know how tired I am from drawing so many pictures? Definitely. Kazama chuckled dryly, inwardly cursing inwardly. Tired? They're all busy working, what does it have to do with you? He secretly envied the ninjas, it was so convenient. If he knew that technique, he wouldn't need to do any work himself either. By the way, Lord Saratobi has something to discuss with you and needs you to come see him. Page 42. Okay, I'll go find him later. Akabane indicated that he knew, and then, ignored him. If it's urgent, the body flicker technique can get him there in the blink of an eye. Since the third Hokage isn't in a hurry, why should he be? The clone is still working. There are over 60 children present, so it will probably take quite some time to resolve the situation. Unfortunately, there's no medical ninjutsu now. Akabane sighed with emotion. These children are all members of the Whirlpool clan, and whose blood is taken from them will confirm his suspicions. However, without medical ninjutsu, if he dares to make a move, the entire Uzumaki clan's top experts might come out in the next second. We can only wait patiently. Given the current situation, if Konoha intervenes in the land of whirlpools, the other ninja villages will likely follow suit. By then, the blood of the Uzumaki clan would not be difficult to find, and he secretly pondered how to maximize his own interests. Shadow clones combined with illusions might be able to disguise one's identity. Akabane thought to himself. While living in Konoha is peaceful, he is also bound by its rules, and he needs to break free from them. Shadow clones and illusions are good choices, but there's a prerequisite. You need enough chakra. This means that he must first exchange for the chakra enhancement of the half-immortal physique. Compared to that, ordinary Sharingan can be put aside for now. Akabane lay on the cart, feeling drowsy, and was just about to take a nap. Brother Akabane, someone's here. 3, no, one of them is a clone. Shingyue leaned close to Chiyu's ear and whispered something. Somebody is coming? He was slightly surprised. After his mental strength continued to improve, Chiyu's perception ability was not bad, but he heard nothing. Shinyu not only discovered it, but also knew how many people and clones the other party had. It's terrifying that someone so young has such a keen sense of perception. On the battlefield, the enemy's deployment has no secrets, so fighting will be a piece of cake. Akabane shuddered and solemnly whispered, Kiyotsuki, you must never tell anyone about this ability. You must pretend you don't know, understand? Okay. The little girl nodded as if she understood but not quite. At that moment, Akabane himself heard the voices of the three. Before long, Orochimaru, Tsunade, and Hiruzen Sarutobi's clones all came into view. Where is Jiraiya? Akabane was taken aback, then realized that the third Hokage had probably asked him to go over because Jiraiya had caused trouble again. Jiraiya has disappeared. Tsunade, filled with sorrow and self-blame, said, It's my fault for not being able to provide support in time, otherwise. Tsunade, this is not your problem. Hiruzen Sarutobi's clone shook his head, his expression complex. What happened? Akabane had some vague guesses in his heart, but he still needed to ask for clarification. Jiraiya used a summoning jutsu, and then disappeared. Orochimaru's voice was lower than usual, clearly indicating that he was very unhappy. The key issue is that I didn't teach him psychic abilities. Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed. Jiraiya was a commoner whose parents died in the First Shinobi World War. How could he have learned the summoning jutsu for no reason? This technique is not common, there are probably not many people in Konoha who know about summoning techniques. Akabane's heart skipped a beat upon hearing this. Changed. In the original story, Jiraiya learned his summoning technique from the third Hokage, but now that he has appeared, the third Hokage has focused his attention on the land of whirlpools, so he hasn't had time to teach Jiraiya the summoning technique. So, where did Jiraiya get his summoning skills from? Without anyone to teach me, if I were to guess, there's only one possibility: Mount Myaboku, the Great Toad Sage. No one knows the strength or age of the Great Toad Sage. As the most mysterious being of Mount Myaboku, it can predict parts of the future. The so-called child of prophecy is the product of this elder. If it is that, it wouldn't be difficult for Jiraiya to learn summoning techniques. What did you think of? Seeing that Akabane seemed to be deep in thought, Tsunade immediately asked him anxiously. It's highly unlikely that Jiraiya learns summoning techniques on his own. It's more likely that some powerful Holy Land took a liking to him, which is why he learned summoning techniques. Akabane explained. Hearing this hope, Orochimaru quickly asked, Master, is this really possible? The third clone took a drag of his cigarette, pondered for a moment, and said, If there really is some powerful being who taught Jiraiya the art of summoning, guiding him there wouldn't be difficult. Akabane glanced at the third Hokage and couldn't help but mutter to himself, the third Hokage must have anticipated this possibility and deliberately made Orochimaru and Tsunade anxious. If the third Hokage was truly worried about Jiraiya, it would have been better to seek help from his own summoning beast than from Akabane. So, Jiraiya is most likely safe? Tsunade breathed a sigh of relief, and her tense expression finally relaxed. Yes, but there are too many mysterious beings in the spirit world. It's too difficult to find out where he is. We can only wait for him to come back on his own. Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed and uttered a word from his heart. Mt. Myamu. The surrounding area is filled with petrified toad statues, and not far away, a huge toad and a giant snake are locked in a tense standoff. Jiraiya looked completely bewildered. Where is this place? Child of humanity, you have finally appeared. An aged voice came from above. Jiraiya looked up and saw what appeared to be a small green dot above the waterfall. Upon closer inspection. A toad? What kind of place is this? Jiraiya was shocked. He had never systematically studied summoning techniques, so he had no idea what summoning beasts were, let alone how powerful Mount Myaboku was. He thought he had fallen into a horde of monsters. Yes, our Lord has long foreseen that a child would be lost on Mount Myaboku. Immortal Fukasaku said calmly. However, before he could finish speaking, Jiraiya interrupted him. Someone clearly taught me this ninjutsu in a dream, saying that I could use it to turn danger into safety. I only came to this godforsaken place because I believed your nonsense. Let me out of here. Jiraiya looked furious, feeling that he had been deceived. Forehead. The immortal was somewhat taken aback and remained stunned for a full half-minute. This isn't what we agreed on. Don't worry about it. What's important is that this is the place you were destined to come to, and your name will surely be recorded on the scroll of Mount Myaboku. Then another toad jumped out from the side. It was none other than the Hermit Shima of Mount Myaboku. Destiny? That's right, the Lord prophesied that you would come to Mount Myaboku and take away the power of the toad. That's what Master Shima said. Jiraiya pondered this more and more, finding it increasingly strange. After a moment's thought, he said, No, let me think. You secretly taught me this strange ninjutsu, then tricked me into coming here by saying it could resolve the crisis, thus fulfilling your prophecy. Even Shima the immortal was speechless. How did this white-haired boy change like this? He's not quite the same as he was supposed to be. If I didn't often draw comics and think about the plot, I would have been fooled by you. What are you trying to do by lying to me? Jiraiya, believing he had seen through the other party's intentions, stood there arrogantly. Enough with the nonsense. At Mount Myaboku, you can become stronger and accomplish many things you couldn't do before. And being here is proof that you are the chosen one. The immortal master was furious. What kind of manga is this? It's corrupting perfectly good kids like this. There was no way to reason with them, so I had to resort to force. Chapter 51 The Lost Art. It's so boring without Jiraiya. Tsunade's fists were itching, and knowing that Jiraiya might be alright, she immediately felt relieved. Girls shouldn't be so violent. Don't you understand how to be gentle? Akabane is very troubled. Jiraiya went on vacation to Mount Myaboku, so he had to take his place on the mission. The problem was that with him on the team, the third Hokage didn't need to use a clone to accompany him. Not being able to rest, and having to take care of Orochimaru and Tsunade, the pressure is immense. I'm not as gentle as the girls from the Uzumaki family. You don't have to come out on missions with us. Tsunade's forehead veins bulged, and she walked ahead with an unpleasant expression. If it weren't for the fact that Akabane was physically weak, he might have punched her instantly. I didn't say that. Akabane shrugged, seemingly unconcerned. Orochimaru looked at Akabane suspiciously, but couldn't see any flaws. However, he felt something was off. If he hadn't confirmed that Jiraiya had disappeared, he would have suspected that the Akabane in front of him was Jiraiya in disguise, just as reckless and suicidal. He became suspicious, and his subtle movements were noticed by someone in the shadows. That's too reckless, you need to avoid that in the future. Akabane cursed the clone under his breath, while secretly memorizing the key points. Shadow clones possess independent consciousness, so we must be careful with our language and personality disguises from now on. Otherwise, even a young Orochimaru could detect it, let alone fooling cunning and ruthless people like the third Hokage in Danzo. He pondered for a moment, then realized that letting the two separate entities do the work was probably not a good idea. The shadow clone slowed down, landing at the back of the three, and the next second. Substitution. Switch positions and quickly dissolve the clone. Orochimaru had a subtle feeling and looked back at Akabane, but couldn't quite put his finger on what was wrong. Page 43. Hey, you're sneaking around behind, are you trying to run away? Tsunade turned around, her face contorted with malice. If Akabane really tries to slack off and run away, she might just deliver a righteous punch. No, I was just tired and walked a little slower. From beginning to end, Akabane was merely testing the combined effects of shadow clones and illusions. If they really want to slack off, now is not the time, otherwise Orochimaru and Tsunade alone might not be able to escape. He may be lazy, but he wouldn't joke about his companion's life. By the way, where are we headed today? Akabane followed leisurely, still unaware of what they were going to do today. To kill rogue ninjas, you need a target. The teacher didn't give any instructions, so he probably wants us to investigate on our own. We encountered quite a few ninjas ahead yesterday, so let's start investigating from here today and see if we can find any clues. Orochimaru pointed to the three-way intersection in the woods ahead. I gonna go see. Akabane walked ahead and stood on a large tree to observe the terrain. You were separated yesterday? After glancing at the surroundings, he had a general idea of what was going on. This location is perfect for an ambush by Kirigakure. If it weren't for the third Hokage's shadow clones accompanying them, Orochimaru and his group would have been doomed. Yes, the technique of concealing oneself in mist. Tsunade replied. The traces have been cleaned up, and it's very likely that someone will come back later. Orochimaru walked around for a moment, and then said calmly. It's a pursuit team. Tsunade was not surprised at all. If Kirigakure couldn't even do these things, how could it possibly become one of the 5 great ninja villages? If only Chinyue were here right now. Akabane sighed inwardly. Kiyotsuki's perception was most deadly to these mist ninja. With her radar-like perception, techniques like concealment and silent assassination are nothing but jokes. However, she is only 6 years old, and he cannot send a 6-year-old girl to the battlefield. Setting aside his distracting thoughts, Akabane looked down from his vantage point and carefully examined any possible clues in his surroundings. Hey, what is that? Suddenly, he saw something strange. What? Tsunade paused for a moment, then looked in the direction Akabane pointed. With her sharp eyes, she immediately noticed the strange phenomenon Akabane mentioned. She walked slowly over, and as she got closer, she finally saw it clearly. It was a scrap of paper. What is this? Akabane asked. A tattered piece of paper, only a corner left, but it looks. Tsunade recalled carefully, a hint of anger and embarrassment showing on her face. What's wrong? It looks like it belongs to that idiot Jiraiya. Did he accidentally drop it during a summoning ritual? Orochimaru saw it and recognized it as well. Jiraiya's? Could it be? Akabane paused, then if he wanted Jiraiya's paper, it might be one of his artworks. Did you accidentally drop it during a psychic ritual? He conjured up a whole host of images in his mind, his expression growing increasingly strange. No wonder Tsunade had that look on her face. What happened? Orochimaru was slightly taken aback, not understanding why they both had that expression. Haven't you seen Jiraiya's paintings? Drawing? Jiraiya, that idiot, can draw? Orochimaru was stunned for a moment, feeling his worldview being shaken. It was the first time he had ever known that Jiraiya, that idiot, could actually draw. What do you think this is, the work of an idiot? Tsunade gritted her teeth. In her memory, Jiraiya started to become increasingly wise from that time onwards, such as infiltrating the women's bathhouse. I'm quite curious. Orochimaru said in a low voice. Knowing that Jiraiya could draw comics, he couldn't help but think of his own story that hadn't even started yet. He's even worse than that idiot. How could someone as proud as him accept that? Don't investigate, that's not a painting, it's a nightmare. Akabane thought of Jiraiya's terrifying art style and couldn't help but shudder. The visuals were even worse than those in Europe and America. Putting all that aside, although we have this piece of paper, without Tsukumo and his wolf fawn, we have no way to track the scent. Tsunade didn't want to discuss the Jiraiya manga anymore, as it triggered a very strong destructive urge in her. Akabane looked around and said, "Just look around randomly. If we can't find it, we'll go back. The rogue ninjas are far stronger than them. If they really find their lair, even the three of them wouldn't dare to attack. Since that's the case, why not just wander around the area?" To be honest, Akabane is very curious about what the rogue ninjas' expression would be if they saw Jiraiya's manga. Would their expression be distorted or would they masturbate like crazy? Somewhere in the land of whirlpools, a group of rogue ninjas huddled together, each holding a piece of paper with crude and obscene drawings on it. They passed the pages around, and everyone read them with great interest and fascination. There was no art in this world. People's perception of paintings was that they were just boring decorations. Who knew that there was such a wonderful form? After a moment, everyone put down the paper and sighed listlessly. After reading a few pages, there was no sense of what the next part would be like, leaving everyone feeling frustrated. Unfortunately, that's all there is. If that white-haired kid isn't dead, we can grab him and force him to keep drawing. A Chunin sighed, his face showing a lack of satisfaction. After sighing, he turned his head and couldn't help but shudder. What's the situation? Everyone's expressions were extremely strange. Their eyes seemed to be shining, which sent chills down his spine. My lord, I need to go out for a bit. I need to go out to use the restroom. Go, give me all these paintings, I'll take them to the cave to keep them safe. Chapter 52 Bloodline Fusion Illusion. The three of them split up and searched within 100 paces of each other. Akabane wandered around aimlessly and slowly found a small riverbank. The land of whirlpools is rich in water resources and has many rivers, so the ninja from the Mist Village can often escape by using the rivers. Akabane went to the riverbank to search for any remaining traces. However, not far from the riverbank, the bushes rustled with the sound of leaves rustling against each other. Animals, or something else? He was suspicious and cautiously approached, so as not to alert the enemy. As they drew closer, Akabane glimpsed a patch of blue through the gaps in the leaves of the bushes. The clothes of a rogue ninja. He was secretly on guard, but at the same time he found it very strange. What was this guy doing sneakily? Quietly descending from the tree to the ground, Akabane formed hand seals, his figure shrinking into the earth. Earth escape, the art of beheading in the heart. As I touched the edge, the sounds coming from above became clearer and clearer. Just as Akabane approached the vicinity of the Mist Ninja, he heard a strange cry, followed by what appeared to be the other party packing something. Before he could make a move, the ninjutsu was swiftly activated. Boom! The earth cracked open, and a hand grabbed the ninja's feet and quickly pulled him down. What? A blood-curdling scream echoed through the tranquil woods. Enemy! Upon hearing the stranger's voice, Orochimaru and Tsunade immediately teleported to the scene. When they arrived at the riverbank, they saw a strange scene. Akaba's clone was holding a kunai to the throat of a rogue ninja from Kirigakure, while the real Akabane was washing his hands in the river with a look of disgust on his face. What's the situation? Orochimaru was slightly faster than Tsunade and arrived at the side first. Akabane rubbed his hands together vigorously, sighed softly, and said, "It's a long story. Look over there." After hearing this, Orochimaru turned to look at the rogue ninja. On the ground, a pool of murky white gradually merged into the earth. If we had arrived any later, it might have been completely invisible. You are Konoha ninjas." The rogue ninja looked ashamed, and with a kunai strapped to his neck, he spoke nervously and stammered. "How did you manage to capture a Mist Ninja alive?" Tsunade was immediately shocked when she saw the Mist Ninja bound to the ground by the decapitation technique in her mind. He was dozing off, and Akabane found an opportunity. Orochimaru calmly stepped on the ground and said indifferently. Jiraiya's contribution. Akabane added, while vigorously rubbing his arms with water. Page 44. His hands didn't touch those things, but the thought of it still bothered him. If he weren't outside, he would have liked to take a good shower. What's most frustrating is that these useless natives actually became obsessed with such crude things. Ridiculous. Absurd. That's an insult to drawing skills. What do you mean? Tsunade looked completely bewildered, not understanding what was going on. What I mean is, have any of you rogue ninjas seen a white-haired brat? Akabane didn't want to explain such deep things to Tsunade, so he turned to ask the captured rogue ninja. No. No, we're looking for him too. The traitor stammered. My second question is, where is your rogue ninja's gathering point? Akabane asked. I won't tell you, or the chief will kill me, he said in fear. If you're in our hands, your leader would at least have to ask us before he can kill you, but if we want to kill you. Orochimaru licked his lips. This statement at least indicates that the other party is organized, and that there is a leader in the small group who leads them. If you don't talk, I'll castrate you. Akabane threatened without expression. Fear flashed across the rogue ninja's face. Being castrated would be worse than death, but the thought of his leader's terror extinguished the thought as soon as it crossed his mind. It seems there is nothing we can do. The words had barely left his mouth when the rogue ninja was momentarily dazed. He saw his shadow clone pull him out of the ground, and then strike him with a slash. Endless suffering. After a scream, he found himself in a daze, and Akabane reappeared before him, only to find himself back underground. Illusion? Say or not? Akabane's voice rang in his ears. It seems you don't want to talk about it. He still had some questions in his mind and didn't have time to answer them before the illusion returned. The recurring hallucinations, but he discovered something to his utter horror. Even after the illusion was dispelled, his body was still in excruciating pain, as if he had truly endured that torture. What kind of illusion is this? As a ninja from the mist, they have a course specifically designed to deal with the tortures derived from genjutsu, but he had never seen such a terrifying genjutsu before. The Kaming clan, controlled by the five senses. Akabane said calmly, I am too young and my skills are not good enough to perfectly realize the manifestation of the five senses. You are a good test subject for me. No. No. Kill me, kill me. Upon hearing the word saddle horse, his pupils contracted, and he was filled with immense fear. Too young? Lack of skill? Just lie. Only when control reaches its peak can one truly master illusion. Like this time, it's clearly a Naruto seeing technique, yet it possesses the characteristic of manipulating the five senses. Every inheritor of the Kurama bloodline limit is a nightmare on the battlefield, and in his view, Akabane is more terrifying than the vast majority of Kurama clan members. Killing you would be too easy. I've calculated that it might take at least 100 illusions before it truly injures your body. So, are you going to talk or not? Akabane's eyes were cold and filled with murderous intent. I said. Our hideout is in the mountains upstream of this river, there's a cave there, In his extreme fear, he broke down, screamed in terror, and spilled out all the information in one go. If I knew you were lying to me, I would try my best to control myself better, 200 times or even 1,000 times. After saying that, Akabane had his clone knock him unconscious with a chop to the neck. At that moment, he saw Orochimaru and Tsunade looking at him with horrified expressions. What happened? Good question. Orochimaru silently complained to himself, but didn't know where to begin. Tsunade took a deep breath and asked cautiously, Can you really control yourself and use the illusion over 100 times before sustaining any wounds? It's true that I lack self-control. I probably won't get a scratch even after hundreds of times. Akabane shook his head. If I'm not mistaken, you used the Naruto seeing technique? Orochimaru pondered for a long time before deciding where to begin his questions. The Naruto seeing technique can also be combined with manipulation of the five senses? Yes, it's a direction I've been researching recently, and I've only just grasped a little bit of it and I'm not very proficient yet. Akabane nodded in agreement, and at the same time gave his shadow clone a wink, signaling him to take his men back to Yuzushio village. In this situation, living prisoners are far more useful than dead enemies. Bloodline ninjutsu? Upon hearing this, Orochimaru couldn't help but gasp. He had specifically asked the third generation about some things related to the control of the five senses, so he knew some secrets. The Kurama clan has strong control over their five senses, but their clan awakening rate is very low. In addition, their mental realm is complex, and from the first generation to the present, their application of bloodline limits is still very rudimentary. The combination of ordinary illusion techniques and the manipulation of the five senses is something no one has been able to do yet. In other words, Akabane is the first member of the Kurama clan to fuse ordinary illusion techniques with his bloodline limit. As expected of Akabane-kun. He was shocked, and at the same time, he thought of a deeper question that Akabane's so-called laziness might all be an act, and that he had actually been studying ninjutsu, genjutsu, and bloodline limits. Coincidentally, Tsunade also harbored the same suspicion. Seeing their expressions, Akabane knew that the two seemed to have some kind of misunderstanding about him. The ancestors of the Kurama clan had long attempted to fuse bloodline limits with illusion techniques, but they discovered that the fusion only caused pain to the other party and could not transfer the injuries in the illusion to reality. Consequently, they abandoned this research and instead focused on simplifying the use of bloodline limits. Therefore, Akabane's method was merely to imitate part of the effects of Tsukuyomi using the bloodline limit of the Kurama clan. However, seeing their shocked expressions, Akabane decided not to reveal the matter. After all, outsiders generally couldn't access the Kurama clan's records. Chapter 53 has only one page? Shouldn't we ask the teacher? Akabane felt a headache coming on. Knowing the location of their hideout, the two immediately set out to infiltrate and eliminate it. Let's just look around from the outside, we won't go in. Tsunade said excitedly. I become a believer in this nonsense, every man has said that. Akabane silently complained to himself. He looked at Orochimaru, hoping that Lung Jun would give a calm answer in the future. Orochimaru pondered for a moment and explained, I think the teacher sent us out here because he wants to train us. Going back like this won't do. Lung Jun is still immature. Akabane sighed softly, and the two completely ignored his reasonable suggestion. In the short time that followed, they had already set off, preparing to head to the stronghold of the rogue ninjas they had been forced to confess. Seeing that they were all leaving, he had no choice but to follow, no matter how unwilling he was. The enemy's lair was upstream on the river. The three of them followed the river upstream and soon came to see a mountain. Indeed, it's not far. Orochimaru whispered to Akabane. The fact that they were handfighting at that location proves that their base isn't far away, which is why Orochimaru agreed to come and check it out. The enemy leader is definitely a Jonin, we can't go any further. Akabane is terrified of death, and the Jonin just happens to be able to threaten his life. Kiba-kun, a life that's too comfortable won't lead to improvement, and don't you think this is a good opportunity? Orochimaru licked his lips, his eyes filled with fighting spirit. Opportunity? Do you think leaders are that stupid? Akabane retorted without any politeness. Jiraiya's cringeworthy works are already full of idiots. You never know, look ahead. Orochimaru gestured forward with his lips. Akabane looked up at the direction he indicated and saw a clump of trees rustling gently. At that moment, he believed it. These unsophisticated natives were truly captivated by Jiraiya's clumsy work. King Akabane, I have a bold idea. Orochimaru smiled slightly. I have a somewhat immature proposal. Akabane casually replied, then quietly retreated, withdrawing from the other party's vigilance range. What the hell are you talking about? Tsunade was completely confused. Why did they leave again? However, next, she saw Akabane sit down and quickly wield his pen. Draw? She leaned closer, her cheeks flushed red, and her chakras surged. Tsunade, don't do it. Orochimaru quickly grabbed Tsunade. He knew how terrifying this girl's fists were. If Jiraiya hadn't been so resilient last time, he might have really died. Page 45. I don't like this kind of painting, but I'm going to prove that Jiraiya's stuff is complete garbage. After Akabane finished the drawing, he clipped it to the canvas and waited for it to dry. Tsunade glanced at it and found that the small page did not contain any overly crude content. Instead, it featured a delicate and alluring art style and characters, making even Tsunade, a woman, want to continue reading. Not going to continue drawing? After reading it, Orochimaru realized that Akabane had no intention of continuing to draw. I've said it before, I don't like this kind of art. One page is enough to deal with this kind of low-quality garbage. Akabane said proudly. In terms of drawing skills and understanding of manga, Jiraiya was no match for him. After all, he had a whole world behind him. What are you going to do next? Tsunade did not react too strongly, seemingly having temporarily dispelled her prejudice. The shadow clone transforms and disguises itself, then goes in to present the painting. Akabane said, after that, we'll wait for a signal. If the shadow clones disappear and give me feedback, we'll retreat immediately. A wise man does not stand under a dangerous wall. Of course, I would split myself up to do such a dangerous job. He felt no remorse for this. This is the best solution. The teacher is right. Akabane only truly reveals his talents in times of crisis. Tsunade and Orochimaru exchanged a glance and nodded in agreement. He formed hand seals, creating a shadow clone, and then used a transformation technique to transform into the ninja they had previously captured. Akabane handed over the painting, his clone's face expressionless, but his eyes revealed deep contempt. Whether or not he is discovered, he and the painting will never be able to return to each other. Go, I will remember you. Silent contempt is the most deadly. He was somewhat embarrassed, but at least he managed to say something polite. The clone took the painting, got up, and headed up the mountain. As he passed by that grove of trees, he glanced at the other person, who was still engrossed in dealing damage. Not daring to disturb them, Akabane's clone continued forward until it reached the top of the mountain, and no one came to stop or inquire. With such lax defenses, Jiraiya is too powerful. He silently complained to himself. A few pages, probably just enough for one plot point, resulted in such a huge disaster. A physiological weapon. The clone shook its head and continued upwards. A moment later, a campfire appeared, followed by a narrow cave entrance. The cave was disguised and would be difficult for an ordinary person to spot without close inspection. As soon as they stepped into the cave, a voice came from inside. "Chief, it's me. Lu Chuan, what's wrong?" I searched outside and found traces of the white-haired brat, but he ran very fast. I only managed to pick up a single page he dropped, so I brought it here for you, sir, to review. The clone said respectfully. Paper? Let me see it. The leader came out from inside, took it, and immediately showed a look of surprise on his face. He was eager to look at it after just a few glances, but unfortunately, the painting only contained that much content, with no further details. Female Ninja Musen, is this the only page? He asked irritably. Yes, I was incompetent and failed to capture him. Akabane's clone said with shame. Where did you find him? My men were at the riverbank where we ambushed them earlier when they spotted him. The words were half true and half false, leading the leader to imagine that direction. Only one person? Yes, leader. He seems to have gotten separated from the Konoha ninjas. It's very likely due to that strange ninjutsu from before. The clone continued to answer. The leader was torn. He didn't dare go if a Konoha Jonin was present, but when he heard that only the white-haired brat was there, he was tempted. If we can capture it, we can not only obtain the painting, but also exchange benefits with Konoha. Take me to see it. Yes. Plan succeeded. Akabane's clone turned around and immediately led the way. However, after taking a few steps, he asked with some concern, Sir, what if the Konoha ninjas find this place if we leave? Even Yazushio village doesn't know we're here. How could Konoha know we've only been here a few days? Besides, does it even matter? He sneered. That Jonin from Konoha was incredibly strong. If he were to be found here, staying would only be suicide. We're all rogue ninja. Yes, my lord. Judging from what the other party said, there shouldn't be any other Jonin here, and the rogue ninja organization is very loose, so he doesn't care about the lives of others. This is something we can take advantage of. The plan is feasible. Thinking of this, he did not actively deactivate the clone to issue a warning, but instead led the leader of the stronghold to the location where he had previously captured the ninja surnamed Yanagawa. Chapter 54, Pursue him again, and take him down. Safety. From Akabane's position, they could see the clone leading the leader away. Okay, I can't wait. These scum deserve to go to hell. Tsunade clenched her fist and said through gritted teeth. It was these rogue ninjas who destroyed the happiness of the land of whirlpools. Although she was not from the land of whirlpools, she felt a deep empathy for Mito Uzumaki because of their relationship. Calm down, we still need to wait. Orochimaru wiped his kunai. This is a killing and a test, but the difference is that the test is one they set for themselves. As the figure receded into the distance, Akabane waved his hand, signaling that everyone could begin their operation. Orochimaru and Tsunade left instantly, heading up the mountain. If you all take action, then I'll provide support and pick up the scraps. Akabane sat cross-legged in a secluded spot at the foot of the mountain, observing the movements on and off the mountain while simultaneously channeling his power to restore his chakra. After using shadow clones twice, he had very little chakra left in his body, and going up would only be a burden. The other side. The clone, carrying the leader of the stronghold, left and arrived at the riverbank where the previous battle had taken place. You were fighting here? Traces of Earth escape technique. He became suspicious, but did not take any action. Yes, sir. That brat has somehow become much stronger and now possesses a powerful toad summoning beast. I was caught off guard and ambushed by him. The clone said with shame. Why not investigate immediately? The Jonin stepped on the liquid beneath his feet and realized why he had been ambushed. Useless. You don't know how to do anything useful, all you do is talk about this. Yes, sir, you are right. The clone had no morals whatsoever and immediately admitted his mistake. Since he had played a role, he had to take the blame. After admitting his mistake, he pointed to the direction of Wachao village and said, he failed to kill me and was instead chased by me. However, that area is Wachao village territory, and I dared not pursue him in, so he escaped. Our strength is not yet sufficient to enter Wachao village. When the name of Yuzushio village was mentioned, even though he was a Jonin, a trace of fear still appeared on the leader's face. A thought struck him deeply, and he realized something: the Vortex clan's talent had caused them a lot of suffering. But here's the problem, he's afraid to enter Wachao village, so how can the delay plan be implemented? He had a headache. The return of a Jonin will change the entire situation and could even put Orochimaru and Tsunade at great risk. He must stall for time or issue a warning, no matter what. But... Lu Chuan, you seem lost in thought. What are you thinking about? The leader asked calmly. The clone instinctively sensed something was wrong. It seemed as if a faint killing intent was locking onto him. Are you being suspected? He made a quick decision, forming hand seals and using the substitution technique to switch places. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. A massive surge of chakra erupted, and in the next instant, a magnificent water dragon burst forth from the river, reaching them in the blink of an eye. Too fast. Just as the clone finished the substitution technique and switched places, the water dragon roared in. He had no time to dodge and was hit directly by the water dragon. However, at the same time, he unleashed his last illusion technique, the Narakusite technique. As the clone dissipated, Akabane instantly sensed it, and memories of his death echoed in his mind. They're just throwing water cannons at us, that's bullying. Water Dragon Bullet is a B-rank ninjutsu, which is very difficult to use and consumes a lot of chakra. It is a powerful water-style technique that only Jonin can use. Using this thing against a genin, let alone a clone, even Akabane himself would have a hard time dodging it. Moreover, this Jonin has an abundance of combat experience. Completely crushed. Akabane quickly got up and headed up the mountain. Since the other party had made a move, it meant they had discovered some clues and might come back. The later he left, the more dangerous it would be. Not long after. Boom! A loud bang came from one corner of the mountain. Page 46. Needless to say, Tsunade couldn't hold back and used too much force in her punch. Akabane quickly approached that direction, and a moment later another large tree was smashed down, its tall trunk falling directly to the ground. That punch was too much. The Senju clan's physique and chakra reserves, combined with their superhuman strength, are simply monstrous. Anyone not skilled in taijutsu would likely be severely injured from a single punch. A bead of cold sweat appeared on Akabane's forehead. The fact that Orochimaru survived so many punches in the manga is truly a testament to how scientific research triumphs over innate talent. But the key thing right now isn't superhuman strength. Tsunade, the Jonin have seen through it. Retreat! After receiving the command, he used his hearing to pinpoint the location and quickly headed towards the other source of the noise. What? Damn it! Upon hearing this, Tsunade caught up with the Chunin and killed him with a full-force attack, then prepared to go find Orochimaru. However, when they turned around, they saw a figure rapidly approaching from the foot of the mountain. No time, I'll do it. Tsunade shouted and then quickly ran up the mountain, soon reaching the top of the cave. One punch. Boom! With a deafening roar, the cave could not withstand the immense force, and its roof was shattered. Another punch, and the cave collapsed. Withdraw! After shouting, Tsunade didn't turn around and fled directly towards Uzushio village. You have it! Akabane was surprised for a moment, then followed and retreated towards Uzushio village. Although it's unclear whether the third Hokage was secretly protecting them, judging from their strength on paper, the combat power of the Jonin was far beyond what they could withstand. Upon hearing the signal, Orochimaru immediately abandoned the attempt to entangle them and quickly retreated towards Uzushio village. However, 3 genin dare to cause trouble and kill people? Do you think I, Yamakoichi, got my Jonin status by lying around? A cold voice rang out, followed by a thick fog that enveloped the surroundings. A mist-concealing technique that covers the entire mountain. Orochimaru's heart skipped a beat. Knowing something was wrong, he quickly retreated towards Akabane and the others. We have to go back. Akabane also noticed the gradually spreading fog. If he didn't go back now, he would be gambling that Hiruzen Sarutobi had a backup plan. But if you gamble with your companion's life, are you still a companion? At least he couldn't get over his own mental hurdle, and neither could Tsunade. How do you find it in the fog? Tsunade was extremely anxious. She couldn't save Jiraiya, and now she can't save Orochimaru either. She's about to lose her mind. Follow me. Akabane didn't waste any words and led the way. The fog is the domain of the Mist Ninja. Yamakoichi is a Jonin of the Mist Village, but he would never have imagined that Akabane also knows how to orient himself in the fog. Although Orochimaru had no training in this area, he had a strong memory and clearly remembered the location of the mountain path and Akabane and the others. He used both the body flicker technique and the substitution technique, not daring to linger at all. Call out. A faint sound came, and Orochimaru immediately turned to the side, forming hand seals at the same time, and met a major breakthrough. The whirlwind flew out, and although it failed to disperse the mist, it did blow the shurikens down. Wow! A splash of water was heard, and Orochimaru sensed a fluctuation of chakra. Water release, water chaos. Basic ninjutsu, usable by Jonin, its power is naturally extraordinary. Orochimaru's face turned slightly pale, and he was caught off guard. Just then. Boom! A large tree fell from the mist, landing right between Orochimaru and his opponent, its trunk momentarily blocking the jet of water that was about to spray out. In that short time, Orochimaru made his escape. You? Orochimaru was stunned for a moment, then felt a slight touch of emotion in his heart. Stop talking nonsense, what's next? The opponent has at most 10% chakra left. We'll fight and retreat, wearing down their chakra. If they dare to chase us again, we'll finish them off. Your combat strength is very important. Listen to my orders later, and don't act rashly. Akabane said calmly. I know. Tsunade's expression was grave. Aside from a certain family with weak constitutions, the other Jonin's taijutsu is not too bad. Her super strength technique is very strong, but she only has one chance to strike when facing a Jonin. Chapter 55 The third type of property change. There are at least 10 Chunin at this base. We've taken out 6, but the remaining 4 could retaliate at any time. We'd better retreat quickly. Orochimaru's voice was somewhat hoarse. Even though the 3 of them are undoubtedly geniuses of their generation, in terms of overall strength and direct combat ability, they may not even be as good as Chunin. Killing a Chunin and having a head-on confrontation are 2 different things. Follow my instructions. Akabane's expression was grave as he ran, listening for sounds to pinpoint their location. The 3 retreated quickly, raising their vigilance to the extreme, as any Jonin or Chunin could deliver a fatal blow in the mist. Turn right and attack. No sooner had she finished speaking than Tsunade struck out instantly, delivering a punch to his right side. Bang! Substitution technique. However, the piece of wood, though blasted away with tremendous force, still caused the opponent's blood to surge. That force is terrifying. The attacked Chunin was terrified and felt it was absurd. This was a genin. Turn left, use wind release. Orochimaru unleashed a barrage of shuriken while simultaneously forming hand seals. Wind release, Gale Palm. The Gale Palm itself is not very powerful, but it has a very strong effect when combined with ninja tools. A whirlwind spun in his palm, transforming into a storm of steel blades along with the shuriken. This attack is not intended to kill the enemy, but to repel them. The 3 fought and ran, and soon they had created a considerable distance between them. However, at this moment, a figure quickly approached. Jonin, Yama Koichi. When dealing with Jonin, verbal communication is useless. Because the enemy is stronger and reacts faster, any command would only become an opportunity for them to attack. Therefore, Akabane doesn't intend to command them, but instead. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. A fleeting flame, a counterattack the instant the opponent's misty body appeared. What? Koichi Yama was horrified and had no time to dodge before being struck by the massive fireball. The Great Fireball technique is only C rank in difficulty, but its power is extremely strong. Even if a Jonin is hit at close range, he still has a very low chance of dying. Yama Koichi couldn't understand it. How can a genin master 2 nature transformations at the same time? How could a genin possibly see through the hidden mist technique and the body flicker technique so clearly? This is simply impossible. He was going crazy, but now he needed reason more than ever. He had been hit by the fireball and was seriously injured. Water release, Great Waterfall. The art of the Great Waterfall. It was a ninjutsu that required a great deal of chakra and was also very difficult to use. However, before he could finish forming the hand seals, he suddenly felt his chakra stagnate. What happened? Illusion? This brat can even do illusions. When Yama Takashi thought of the shadow clone from before, he instantly understood everything. The shadow clone belonged to this brat. They underestimated their opponent. He was filled with remorse and wanted to use his chakra to dispel the illusion. However, he discovered that he had failed. How is this possible? This illusion, it's the Kurama clan. He couldn't believe it, and an overwhelming fear welled up inside him, but then a sharp pain spread throughout his body, and the illusion quickly collapsed. The next second, he saw that a kunai had pierced his chest. I told you not to come back, but you insisted on coming back anyway, and you even dared to chase after me? Do you think I'm that easy to chase? Akabane was panting heavily, his eyes bloodshot from the intense depletion of his mental energy. The entire battle lasted only a few seconds, but it was the most difficult battle since I transmigrated, and it even revealed that I knew fire release techniques. You, how? Yama Koichi's eyes were wide open, but Akabane had already fled far away to avoid being attacked in his dying moments. Not long after, he actually died. Along with life, the mist that shrouded the mountains also vanished. You actually killed the leader." The remaining 4 Chunin looked at their leader, whose heart had been pierced, in disbelief. This was done by 3 genin. In fact, not only them, but even Orochimaru and Tsunade were stunned. Genjutsu, fire release, earth release. Akaba already knows 3 chakra nature transformations. Just in terms of nature transformation alone, he has surpassed many jonin. Page 47. Are you all looking for death too? Akabane's eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like a madman. Even though he used the 400 points he had just accumulated in the system to exchange for 8 points of mental power and successfully used the 5 senses manipulation on the exhausted Yamakoichi, he was powerless to turn everything that happened in the illusion into real damage, and he couldn't even push the illusion forward. Otherwise, given his personality, he would never have engaged in hand-to-hand combat and used a kunai to deliver a fatal blow. The 4 were already terrified. Although there was one more person than them and Akabane was at his last gasp, who knew if the other 2 genin had hidden many trump cards? They dared not gamble because they were known as traitorous ninja. The village will not seek revenge when a rogue ninja dies, even if their betrayal was feigned, it is still the same in name only. For them, survival is the only thing that matters. Go, let's go. Seeing the 4 people leave, Akabane gritted his teeth and did not faint. Instead, he steadily led Orochimaru and Tsunade away. Orochimaru turned around, his eyes filled with resentment and anger. He didn't hate others, but himself. Why could Akabane have 3 nature transformations, while he could only have 1? If he knew both, he might not be so useless in battle. A genius that appears only once every few decades? Ah! Orochimaru gave a silent, bitter smile. Bloodline limits were incomparable, but anyone could learn chakra nature transformation. Tsunade felt worried and a little upset. She was invincible against Chunin with her superhuman strength and thousand hands physique, but when she encountered Jonin, she realized how powerless she truly was. Superhuman strength alone won't do. The words of 3 generations echoed in her ears, and she truly understood them. Akabane's specialty is illusion magic, but is illusion magic all he knows? Tsunade used to think that way, but now she understands that Akabane has been working hard to make up for his shortcomings. The gap is too big. A thought flashed through their minds simultaneously. Take me away quickly. Akabane's mental energy was greatly depleted, and his head felt like it was about to explode. After barely managing to walk for a short distance, he found it difficult to even walk, let alone retreat. Orochimaru and Tsunade immediately grabbed his hands and used their body flicker technique to escape towards Yuzushio village. Unbeknownst to him, Akabane had already fallen unconscious. What happened? On their way back, they soon encountered Hiruzen Sarutobi, who had rushed over. Because he trusted Akabane, Orochimaru, and Tsunade's abilities, he didn't make any contingency plans. However, when he saw Akabane's clones returning the captured Chunin, while the others didn't, he knew something was wrong. Teacher, I was wrong. I was too impulsive and arrogant. Tsunade felt incredibly guilty. Without them, Akabane would never have faced a Jonin. Akaba said we can't go, but we. Orochimaru fell silent halfway through his sentence. Knowing that Hiruzen Sarutobi could guess the whole story, he simply said no more. You guys were too impulsive. You dared to attack someone who had a Jonin? Did you have a death wish? Hiruzen Sarutobi was furious and immediately went forward to investigate. There was no medical ninjutsu at that time, but as a ninja doctor, he knew a great deal and had some basic medical skills. After checking him over, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It's just that I've exhausted too much mental energy. I'll be fine after a good night's sleep. Tell me in detail, what exactly happened?" Hiruzen Sarutobi, with a red feather on his back, scolded him with a dark face. Our plan was to have Akabane's clone lure the Jonin away. At first, the plan was successful, but then the enemy seemed to realize what was happening and returned to the mountain. We were chased down. Fortunately, Akabane was able to clearly identify the enemy's movements through the hidden mist technique, otherwise we would all be dead. Tsunade explained it from beginning to end. Upon hearing this, Hiruzen Sarutobi interjected, asking, "Have you cleaned up the evidence at the scene?" Forehead. Orochimaru stared blankly, then shook his head dejectedly. These are all weaknesses to a jonin. If you had a jonin with you, you wouldn't need to go to such lengths. So he can be sure that you are not strong enough to dare to come back and kill you. Hiruzen Sarutobi sneered, "In your eyes, what is a jonin?" At the same time, he secretly rejoiced. If Akabane hadn't mastered the third type of chakra nature transformation, these three geniuses might have truly perished here. Chapter 56. We are people in the painting. From now on, you're not going to leave the village. Stay here and reflect on your actions. Akabane had just woken up when he heard good news. It's better not to go out, it's too dangerous. A single jonin forced him to reveal his fire release trump card and spend his remaining 400 plus points to exchange for mental energy. In a real war, there would be jonin everywhere and elites as plentiful as dogs, so that you wouldn't be able to have peace on the battlefield. Akabane had thought of it, but then dismissed the idea. After working so hard, why get up so early to rest? Are you just a tool? Teacher, is it Jiraiya? Tsunade was getting a little anxious. They can't go out. If Jiraiya appears, they won't be able to find him immediately. We have reached an agreement with Yuzushio village, and Yuzushio village ninjas will help us find Jiraiya. Hiruzen Sarutobi said coldly, "Tsunade, you have great talent, but I don't want you to be limited by your talent." Teacher, I understand. Tsunade lowered her head, clearly understanding the meaning behind the third Hokage's words. Teacher, please train us even harder, please. Orochimaru's voice followed. Akabane lay motionless on the bed, his mind racing with thoughts. These two kids are really devastated. But it's also a good thing. More sweat in peacetime means less blood in wartime. Jiraiya's debt has been settled, so the two of them should also work harder. Very good. I am pleased that you have this awareness. First of all, Tsunade, you need to learn to control your chakra, emotions, and power. Orochimaru, you are excellent in every aspect, and you can perfectly combine ninjutsu, taijutsu, and ninja tools, but you currently lack powerful and effective offensive capabilities. Your next goal is to learn Vacuum Ball and Vacuum Great Ball. Orochimaru's first nature transformation was wind release, so the third Hokage's goal for him was to continue strengthening this aspect. Orochimaru, however, had other thoughts in mind. He didn't tell the third generation because he knew the third generation wouldn't agree. Next is Akabane. Get up, I want to talk to you alone. Hiruzen Sarutobi turned around and went into the house. Akaba is awake? Orochimaru was stunned for a moment, then quickly ran into the house. Tsunade rushed in and saw that Akabane was still lying on the bed, showing no signs of reviving. Ahem, teacher, I just woke up too. Akabane sat up guiltily. The third generation was too alert, even though he controlled his breathing rate and breath, he was still detected. Heh, if I couldn't even tell that, I wouldn't be Hokage. Hiruzen Sarutobi sneered, then waved his hand, signaling Orochimaru and the others to leave. He then sat down on the edge of the bed, smoking and looking very melancholy. Waiting for me to speak? Akabane muttered to himself, but remained silent. The room fell silent for a moment. Having no other choice, Hiruzen Sarutobi took a drag of his cigarette and pretended to choke, then said in a gentle and friendly tone, Ahem. Akabane, do you have some other opinions about the village? No, why would you think that? Akabane immediately said. You have control over your 5 senses and your skill in illusion is very high, surpassing many people in the village. You have excellent ninjutsu talent, mastering 3 chakra nature transformations. You were able to use a B-rank ninjutsu like Shadow Clone technique even during your time in the Ninja Academy. Even your physical skills are among the best of the Kaming clan. Hiruzen Sarutobi's barrage of praise made Akabane increasingly uneasy. What was he trying to do? But you've never told us any of this, and you're completely out of step with everyone. Who are you trying to protect yourself from? Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed, his expression melancholy. Jonin are not easy to deal with. Even if the opponent is careless, you still have to seize the opportunity. Teacher, Akabane was speechless for a moment, unsure how to respond. Who are we guarding against? He himself couldn't answer that. Perhaps it was to guard against Danzo, or perhaps it was an unknown enemy in the future. Hiruzen Sarutobi, puffing on his cigarette, continued, "At first I didn't understand, until I saw your work." "Pfft, my comic?" Akabane was surprised and didn't understand why the third Hokage would say that. Then he heard the other person say, "In your eyes, we are the people in the painting, and you are the author who depicts the world in the painting. It will make you powerful and increase your mental strength like never before, but it will also make you lose yourself. I hope that for the next period of time, you can stop writing comics and think about other things." At first, Akabane was shocked and horrified, thinking that his secret had been discovered. But upon hearing the second half of the sentence, his tension and fear subsided somewhat, and he said somewhat haltingly, "Teacher, maybe I really am what you said. As long as you know. Go back to Konoha in a few days, look through your clan's records, and spend some time with your family." After finishing his sentence, Hiruzen Sarutobi sadly smoked a cigarette and left. Only after watching him leave did Akabane's wildly beating heart gradually calm down. As expected, the third generation thought that I had awakened a special Idu because of the manga, rather than because of time travel or something else. They're all shrewd people, we need to be extra careful from now on. Akabane frantically examined himself. Although it was just a false alarm, the third Hokage was right about some things. He did treat some of the people of Konoha with the mindset of looking at people in a painting. Page 48. As for returning to Konoha, now that an agreement has been reached between Konoha and Uzushio village, everyone is heading back home. The meaning behind the third generation's words should be that he helped him deal with Danzo's side. Danzo was always busy. Whether the ninja world was peaceful or not, he would cause trouble. During this period, he also had to do something else, mess with the root organization and the students. Holidays are hard one, so cherish them while you can. No need to go to work. Akabane immediately got up to breathe in the fresh air and, incidentally, watch Orochimaru and Tsunade's training. Of course, it's mainly Tsunade. It's pointless for Akabane to worry about Orochimaru's personality and abilities, but he has a lot of experience with Tsunade's problems. After all, as a health-conscious ninja, he had to carefully manage every bit of chakra and stamina. The two train in different places. Tsunade needs a large open space to test her control of her super strength technique, while Orochimaru needs more targets to learn the vacuum ball. After searching around, Akabane found Tsunade outside the village. She was surrounded by fist craters, but it was clear that she couldn't control them at will, so the craters varied in size and shape. He's still young, not one of the future legendary Sannin. Akabane sighed slightly. He didn't know what had happened to Tsunade in the original storyline that led her to realize the importance of control and eventually become the greatest medical ninja, but she was still very inexperienced. Orochi. Ah, it's you. You actually came out of the room. Tsunade showed no shock in her tone or expression, because she really wasn't in the mood for such jokes. It seems I have no image in your heart at all, and you had no expectation that I would come out to see you. Akabane smiled nonchalantly. I'm not in the mood to talk about this right now. My teacher told me to work on my self-control, but I'm completely lost. Tsunade was dejected. Her chakra control was not weak, but to perfectly control the super strength technique, she needed more precise control, which she was still lacking for the time being. Here's some advice for you. As Akabane spoke, he quickly opened the drawing. Not long after, Tsunade felt a sense of disorientation and found herself in another world. Then she saw a figure. It was another version of herself. Just as she was marveling at this, she saw the illusory her punch the ground, shattering it into pieces, with countless stones flying everywhere. It was quite a sight. Look at the effect of this punch. How is it different from your own? Akabane's voice came through. Tsunade moved closer to examine the effect of the punch, and soon her face showed surprise. It seemed no different, but the cracks in the ground caused by this punch were very even, and even the outer edges were subjected to the same destructive force. To achieve this level of control requires an incredibly strong degree of self-control. That's right, what Akabane showed her was the Sakura rush that she would later create herself. Chapter 57 Jiraiya returns. This punch has taken superhuman strength to another level. Tsunade was amazed by Akabane's ability to create ninjutsu, but at the same time she was extremely troubled, but this requires even stronger control, right? You say you have no direction, I'll give you direction, the rest is up to you. As soon as Akabane finished speaking, the illusion shattered. How to achieve it is Tsunade's own business, it's a process she has to go through. She's too impatient right now, and the process of figuring things out and researching is precisely the time to hone her character. If Akabane interferes, it will only make things worse. You're right, we have a direction now, and it's up to me now. It's just about control, right? I can do it. Tsunade took a deep breath, then leaped up and continued the experiment. Boom! Extremely noisy, not up to standard. At first, Tsunade was a little impatient, but after a few punches, she gradually mastered some tricks and her chakra control became more stable. Akabane was not surprised. What influenced her was not talent, but personality and mindset. Once she calmed down, she gradually came to understand and experience things, and everything fell into place naturally. She is indeed very beautiful when she is serious. He went to the side, lay down on the grass, and peacefully watched the scenery. The sounds continued, but the decreasing volume and noise indicated that Tsunade had made great progress. She began to control her strength, conserving unnecessary chakra. Akabane spent the entire afternoon amidst deafening roars until evening. Ahaha, I finally succeeded. With a loud laugh, Tsunade slammed her fists into the ground, each punch possessing equal power. This is just the first step, and now you have another task. After Akabane finished speaking, he gestured towards the open space with his chin. Although this place is just a desolate area, it still belongs to the territory of Wuchao village. The small pits she smashed must be dealt with. I know, you don't need to remind me. Tsunade chuckled and began pushing the surrounding soil and rocks back. As Akabane said, controlling the force is only the first step. To unleash the full power of superhuman strength, one must control it while simultaneously focusing the force on a single point or area. Moreover, true superhuman strength doesn't come from just the fists, but from being able to use any part of the body. In short, Tsunade is still far from good enough. Well, the only good thing about all the punches you've thrown is that we can farm here in the future. Akabane stood up, looked around, and then smiled and joked. Surprisingly, Tsunade didn't refute it. Instead, she remained silent for a moment and said, "That's good too. At least it shows I'm useful." Ha, don't underestimate yourself. Akabane kicked in some clods of dirt, pretending to help. That's true. At least I can defeat Chunin, which is much better than that idiot Jiraiya. Tsunade said with a smile. Jiraiya, he can be quite stupid most of the time. Akabane seemed to sense something, glanced back, and then nodded in agreement. A moment later. That damn airport is bad-mouthing me behind my back again. An angry yet childish voice came from the woods behind, and the next second a figure leaped out of a tree and landed in the clearing. Jiraiya? Tsunade was surprised and delighted, but then a surge of anger followed. Airport? Are you kidding me? I just haven't developed yet. She clenched her fist, wanting to punch him, but then took a deep breath and told herself, "Control yourself, don't lose your temper." You used psychic abilities, but where did you go? Akabane asked with a smile. Don't even mention it. It's a weird place where I was forced to learn some skills, and I still don't understand them. Jiraiya was quite distressed inside. I have to go back in a few days. He, as expected of a fool. But to encounter such a sacred place for cultivation is already a blessing you've accumulated over 3 lifetimes. You should cherish it. Tsunade's words were barbed, yet they also contained the concern between friends. Jiraiya was completely oblivious, and instead, angered by Tsunade's harsh words, he retorted, "Good fortune? I don't need to rely on a place like this." Alright, that's fine. People need to know their place. Akabane interrupted their pointless argument and continued, "You said someone forced you to cultivate? That place is called Mount Mayaboku, and there's a group of incredibly terrifying toads there. At first, I couldn't believe that there were such powerful toads in the world. Jiraiya felt a sense of fear when he thought about it. Then, he couldn't help but sigh slightly. Although he was stubborn, he had to admit that he had made rapid progress during his time at Mount Mayaboku. Mount Mayaboku? Akabane nodded, having already known the answer. The three Holy Lands are extremely mysterious, and few people know about them except for themselves. Shiyu did this to prevent future bugs from appearing. Yes, I also saw a super terrifying giant snake on Mount Mayaboku. Jiraiya excitedly showed off. A giant serpent? There are so many terrifying summoned beasts on Mount Mayaboku, yet a serpent dares to go there. Tsunade said in surprise. While snakes are considered natural enemies of toads, this restraint disappears when the toad becomes too powerful. If Mount Mayaboku was a sacred place for spirit beasts, then the giant serpent that dared to go up Mount Mayaboku must also be a spirit beast from a sacred place. Akabane shared his guess. Indeed, when I asked Bunta, he told me it was Ryuchi Cave. Jiraiya said. Ryuchi Cave, truly a mysterious place. Akabane sighed softly, unable to help but envy the luck of the Sannin. Ryuchi Cave, Mount Mayaboku, and Shikatsu Forest, the sacred sites of the three great sages, were all encountered by the three legendary ninjas, making it no wonder they became the protagonists of the Second Shinobi World War. However, it wouldn't be too strange if you got two names at once and the corresponding information appeared in the comics later. He thought to himself. By the way, where's Orochimaru? I've gotten stronger now, I'm going to beat him up. Jiraiya was also very arrogant and wanted to find someone to fight. He had originally intended to provoke Tsunade, but upon jumping down from the tree and seeing the large craters on the ground, he immediately stopped his suicidal thoughts. Akabane remained silent. He didn't know whether he should say it or not. Just like Sasuke's mentality exploded when he discovered Naruto's growing strength in the original work, he was unsure how Orochimaru, whose mentality was already somewhat broken, would change when he saw Jiraiya's increased strength. Tsunade had also considered this point, and did not answer immediately. Just as the two were in a dilemma, the third generation's voice came. He is on the mountain behind Yuzushio village. If you want to go find him, go. Thank you, teacher. I will tell you about what I have been through during this time after I defeat Orochimaru. Jiraiya leaped onto the treetop and headed towards the back mountain. Teacher, is this really okay? Tsunade said worriedly. There's nothing wrong with it. You're underestimating Orochimaru. Chapter 58. The third generation exhaled a puff of smoke and spoke calmly. Maybe. Akabane did not refute. The future is inherently uncertain, and all he knew was one possible direction. Moreover, the Orochimaru of today was vastly different from his future self, and they were not comparable. Chapter 58. This painting is a masterpiece. Orochimaru, I'm back. The person arrived before the voice did. The loud shout echoed throughout the back mountain, and Orochimaru, who was practicing chakra nature transformation, stopped. Hey, the idiot's finally back. He looks quite different. Orochimaru's face showed a slight smile. I've had a lot of worries lately, but this smile is genuine. Of course, this genius has been cultivating on Mount Mayaboku and has already surpassed you. Jiraiya said with great pride. Nyamu Mountain? Orochimaru was slightly taken aback. It seemed that his teacher and Akabane were right. Jiraiya had indeed been chosen by a certain Holy Land. He then looked Jiraiya up and down. Judging from his chakra and appearance alone, there seemed to be no change. Come, let this genius show you what true talent is. Jiraiya was incredibly arrogant, and he assumed a fighting stance. Right on my mind. Orochimaru chuckled softly. Having just completed his chakra nature transformation and gained a basic grasp of ninjutsu, he needed an opponent to test his abilities. Although we don't know how much Jiraiya has changed, he is undoubtedly a formidable opponent. The other side. Teacher, who do you think will win? Akabane sat comfortably on a stool, watching the live broadcast through a crystal ball. Hiruzen Sarutobi didn't answer, he just took a drag of his cigarette. Who can win? To be honest, he didn't have an answer either. because he really didn't know what Jiraiya had learned. Tsunade was stunned. This technique. Teacher, what is this? She pointed at the crystal ball, somewhat incredulous. Hiruzen Sarutobi's expression stiffened slightly, and his hand holding the pipe trembled, almost spilling the hot ash onto his hand. I forgot about that. I should have known better than to let them come. This technique. He pondered how to explain this to Tsunade. As I wrote in my comics, this crystal ball is a kind of magic called the telescope magic. Akabane clicked his tongue as he said this, a deadly weapon on the battlefield. No, that's not what I'm asking. Teacher, this kind of technique probably has other uses, right? Tsunade clenched her fists and looked at the crystal ball with a suspicious expression. Cough, Tsunade, how could you think of me like that? Would I do such a thing? Hiruzen Sarutobi said solemnly. What do I think? I didn't say you projected yourself onto him. You really are on the same path as Jiraiya. No wonder you took Jiraiya as your disciple. Tsunade has an exceptionally quick mind and a remarkably strong ability to make connections. It crashed. The room fell silent instantly. Hiruzen Sarutobi puffed on his cigarette, pondering how to rebuild his authority as a teacher. Akabane stared at the crystal ball, then at Tsunade, and made a few hand gestures, saying, Tsunade, restrain yourself, control yourself. Call. Taking a deep breath, Tsunade gradually loosened her fist. However, that threatening expression seemed to be a warning to the third generation, telling him to be careful in the future. Ahem. Watch the competition, watch the competition. Hiruzen Sarutobi awkwardly changed the subject. If it weren't for the fact that the die was cast, he would have slapped himself twice. Why show off your telescope technique in front of Tsunade? Hiruzen Sarutobi secretly vowed never to use these techniques recklessly in front of Tsunade again. Jiraiya had been hospitalized first, and he, as her teacher, didn't want to follow in his footsteps. While they were debating these matters, inside the crystal ball, Jiraiya and Orochimaru had reached the most crucial moment. The game is over. Akabane interrupted their thoughts, directing their attention back to the scene. This is Vacuum Jade? Tsunade was slightly surprised. In just one afternoon, Orochimaru had already mastered the use of the vacuum ball. His talent was indeed powerful. It's not just about ninjutsu, but also the gap in combat experience. Hiruzen Sarutobi spoke at the opportune moment. After only a brief argument, Jiraiya was cornered by the vacuum jewel. Not only that, Orochimaru then took a deep breath. B-rank ninjutsu, vacuum giant ball. Boom! With a sharp screech, the vacuum jade passed over Jiraiya's head, blasting a section of rock behind him into dust. You lost. Orochimaru said calmly. Jiraiya looked at his hands, still somewhat incredulous. Then, he touched his nose with a sullen expression and said, I only failed to summon Gamabunta, otherwise you would not be my match. Gamabunta is still a child, but he is already quite strong. However, he didn't want to rely on external forces to deal with Orochimaru. You have indeed made great progress, but we haven't been idle either, so you're still at the bottom. Orochimaru offered words of comfort while simultaneously wounding his own heart. Akabane glanced at Tsunade discreetly. These two are so arrogant, they clearly care about Jiraiya, yet they insist on acting like this. This genius will definitely surpass you, just you wait and see. Jiraiya wasn't discouraged by his losses, he was used to losing anyway, so he didn't care about winning or losing this particular match. Orochimaru is different. In the past, he wouldn't even need to use ninjutsu, he could defeat Jiraiya with just taijutsu. But now he understands he can't do that. Everyone is making progress. He looked at the mountain and thought to himself, it's not enough, I'm not strong enough. Before, he had no one in front of him, but now he has a goal ahead of him, and this small progress is really insignificant. TCH, I told you he was arrogant. Tsunade pouted and said. However, she had to admit that Jiraiya was no longer at the bottom of the class. Jiraiya is now considered an elite among genin. You think he's weak because you've already reached Chunin level. Hiruzen Sarutobi said with a smile. These 3.5 students each have their own strengths, which makes him very gratified. He certainly wouldn't admit that he was truly at a loss with Jiraiya and didn't know how to teach him according to his aptitude. It was really difficult for him to impart knowledge about Jiraiya's only strength. Fortunately, Jiraiya has now encountered his own opportunity. Alright, it's time to give Jiraiya a welcome feast. Akabane yawned, having expected to witness a rather exciting battle, but unfortunately, Jiraiya was too inexperienced at the moment. That's true. Mount Mayaboku was full of toads. He must have had a very bad time there. Tsunade said with a hint of schadenfreude. I already had them prepare everything, but I still need to tell Jiraiya about his share. Hiruzen Sarutobi withdrew his chakra and cancelled the telescope technique. The Uzumaki clan dared not neglect them, and since they were located by the sea, the meal included many of Konoha's most prized seafood. Akabane's mouth watered at the sight of it. If Jiraiya and Orochimaru hadn't arrived yet, they would have already started eating. Not long after, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside the door. Came back. Akabane immediately rolled up his sleeves, ready to dig in. However, the first thing Jiraiya did after rushing in wasn't to eat, but to huddle up to Akabane. Akabane, I found this by the river, can you take a look at it for me? WTF? Akabane turned his head, but his hand had already grabbed a large shrimp and started peeling it. Look at the characters, the art style, and the drawing skills, it's truly a masterpiece. It's a pity I only got fragments. Jiraiya sat down next to him and mysteriously pulled out a fragment of a piece of paper. The paper was tattered and torn, but Jiraiya managed to piece it back together and recreate parts of the scene. You're a master comic artist, could you help me identify whose work this is? This, how would I know? While Akabane was completely bewildered, he blurted out a denial. This thing was impacted by the water dragon bullet technique, yet it was still able to be collected? Besides, how idle Jiraiya is. Hey, isn't this? Orochimaru was about to explain the origin of this page of the comic when Tsunade stopped him. Even with Jiraiya's crude skills, he's already like this. If he were to learn Akabane's techniques, wouldn't that turn the world upside down? Let me see. Hiruzen Sarutobi glanced at it and a thought suddenly struck him. Okay? Tsunade's eyes were fierce, like those of a tiger. The teacher was just curious about what kind of painting this was. With Hiruzen Sarutobi holding the key to the enemy's weakness, he could only retreat in frustration, secretly regretting his actions. Chapter 59. Chapter 59 The Big Eater. If Jiraiya hadn't asked whose work is this? But instead insisted your painting, Akabane wouldn't have been able to deny it. Now, he pretends nothing's wrong and sits there quietly eating seafood. This painting skill, alas, what a pity. I searched along the riverbank and only found these fragments. Jiraiya treasured the half piece of paper and put it away. Why would you collect this kind of thing? Tsunade looked disgusted. If Akabane hadn't told her to restrain herself, she would have rushed over and torn that tattered painting to shreds long ago. You don't understand. An airport is the pinnacle of art, the goal that this genius strives to learn from. Jiraiya was extremely solemn. Orochimaru was silent. Those who know understand that it's just a fragment of an art painting, while those who don't might think he's acquired some kind of family heirloom. As someone who shares the same interests, Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed softly, pointed to the dining table, and said, "Eat up, or Akabane will have eaten it all." Teacher, don't talk nonsense. I only took 2 shrimp. Akabane dared not respond to Jiraiya's words, lest the guy find out that he had this trick up his sleeve and he wouldn't be able to live in peace even after returning to Konoha. Alright, everyone eat. Hiruzen Sarutobi pretended not to hear, otherwise this topic would never end. That's too cunning. I want some too. Jiraiya shouted as expected, quickly putting the question he had just asked out of his mind. But as they ate, everyone realized something was wrong. What's wrong with this food? Looking up, I saw Tsunade pouring half a plate of food into her own bowl, and then slurping it down in just a few seconds. What the hell? Akabane stared blankly at the shrimp shells she had vomited up, feeling a pang of heartache. Such gluttony is an insult to delicious food. Why is everyone looking at me? Tsunade was stunned. Eat them all, they're quite delicious. No. It's nothing. You guys have a good appetite. I'll have them cook some more dishes. Hiruzen Sarutobi swallowed hard. I've never seen Tsunade this ferocious when we ate together before, she looks terrifying now. Sorry, I used up too much chakra, so I ate a lot. Tsunade realized she had eaten too much and lowered her head in shame. She had a major battle in the morning and then trained continuously in the afternoon, which greatly depleted her energy. Everything she ate was used to replenish her chakra. Akabane had seen this scene in the manga, but as it turns out, the effect in the manga and in reality are completely different. He quietly picked up a few shrimp and crab pieces. Judging by Tsunade's eating speed, there will probably be no food left on the table after she finishes these few. I glanced over and saw that Orochimaru and Jiraiya were clearly unaware of how serious the situation was, still eating slowly and without any intention of stockpiling food. A few seconds later, the two of them stared blankly at the table. A few seconds later, the three of them stared blankly at Akabane, because, at this point, only Akabane had 2 crabs left uneaten on his plate. Alright, Tsunade, it's just replenishing chakra anyway, you can do it anytime. Akabane guarded the food, looking wary. Tsunade has expended a great deal of energy and does need to replenish her chakra with food, but since she doesn't have the Yin seal and won't age, there's no need for her to be in such a hurry. To be honest, I still want to eat. He was momentarily deceived by Tsunade and almost forgot about this matter. Stingy. Tsunade didn't force her, her chakra was almost fully replenished, so waiting a little longer wouldn't matter. The new dishes are served. Airport, leave us a little bit this time. The teacher hasn't eaten yet. After eating and drinking his fill, Akabane witnessed this scene and felt a slight sense of emotion. This meal was their last supper in the land of whirlpools, the group would have to head home the next morning. Although his trip to the land of whirlpools was fraught with twists and turns and crises, it was generally a happy one. His only regret was that the manga sold out, but in the land of whirlpools, only children were interested in it. Since the series primarily focuses on relationships with Konoha, the ninjas of Yuzushio village weren't particularly interested in Naruto. This meant that his points did not surge during this period, remaining roughly the same as when the first volume was released. Akabane sighed inwardly, then thought about the little over 100 points he had and the 4,000 points of his semi-immortal physique on the list. The road ahead is arduous. I need to study other comics later, otherwise it will be a real headache if we can't open up sales channels in other countries. The Naruto series depicts the Leaf Village side, while other countries show a significantly lower level of enthusiasm. This is a matter of immersion. If it were other countries outside of the Whirlpool Kingdom, then the element of hatred would also need to be added. Akabane pondered that he needed to come up with a pen name later, since he was a multinational comic book artist and couldn't let the Land of Fire limit his sales. Not only that, we also need to create more international works, such as One Piece being exported to the Land of Water, which is a good idea. Go back and rest after you've eaten and drunk your fill. Akabane, stay here and I'll talk to you about Kyatsuki. Hiruzen Sarutobi, smoking a cigarette, called Akabane to stop after they finished eating. Akabane paused for a moment. What else could Uzumaki Saigetsu say? Why not just take him away and let his parents take care of him? I hope it's nothing else. Tsunade sneered and went back to her residence. Are you sick of gunpowder? Jiraiya muttered to himself, glancing at Akabane and Hiruzen Sarutobi, unable to think of anything else. Ahem. Don't overthink it, it's really just business. Hiruzen Sarutobi blushed. Ever since he revealed his telescope technique, he had lost all authority in front of Tsunade. Akabane kept his eyes down, his nose closed, and didn't interrupt the conversation to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Teacher, we're leaving now. Orochimaru bowed, turned around, and led the way away. After the three left, Hiruzen Sarutobi remained silent for a moment before saying, Kayazuki Uzumaki is temporarily staying with your Kurama clan. I hope you can mediate within the clan. No problem, since I promised, I definitely won't let her suffer. Akabane said without hesitation. Shuhei is not entirely at ease, but these are turbulent times, and he cannot go to Konoha. He can only secretly offer some benefits to the Kurama clan through you as a deal. The accompanying items are already on the goods to be brought back tomorrow. What? Akabane was stunned for a moment. This sounded like a daughter getting married. They are some special products of the Uzumaki clan. Besides Uzumaki Kyotai, are there any others? I have already informed Tsunade about some of the children, and the other 3 will be taken in by our Sarutobi clan. Sarutobi Hiruzen said. I'm fine then. Is there anything else? If not, I'll go back and rest. Akabane yawned, feeling sleepy. Akabane, what exactly is the content of that painting? Teacher, I really don't know. Maybe Tsunade knows something? Akabane chuckled and denied it outright. Although Jiraiya probably didn't realize this either, as a teacher in Hokage, there are many things he can't say directly. If we deal with it like this, the 3rd generation will have to find another opportunity or offer some conditions to pry him open his mouth. Chapter 60, Kurama and Whirlpool's Marriage? The next morning, when Akabane got up, he saw a large crowd gathered outside. To be precise, almost everyone in the entire Whirlpool village had arrived. As soon as Akabane stepped out the door, everyone outside turned to look. Is he Kurama Akabane? That artist, oh right, the comic artist. My child loves reading it, but unfortunately, he might like those comics even more after he goes to Konoha. Many parents present were feeling somewhat sad as they were about to part ways with their children today, but Akabane noticed that they talked most about Konoha and him. What's the situation? He looked on with suspicion, and then he saw a figure squeeze out of the crowd and run towards him. Brother Akabane, are we going to Konoha today? The little girl was holding books, toys, and some souvenirs like photos, suggesting that the Whirlpool Forest had no intention of letting her return to the Whirlpool country in the future. Akabane patted her head, smiled slightly, and said, yes, come to my house for a while. Ah. The little girl agreed somewhat nervously, but she wasn't really scared, and Akabane didn't even see the Whirlpool tree appear. Why didn't they even see their daughter off when she went to Konoha? Where's your father? Akabane glanced around, but couldn't find him anywhere, not even next to Hiruzen Sarutobi. Dad is too busy to come and take me. He told me to just take my things and go with my brother. The little girl didn't care that her dad wasn't there. She seemed very independent, unlike other children, and today she was dressed very beautifully, just like a princess. Akabane sensed something was wrong, but couldn't quite put his finger on it or remember what it was for the moment. As he walked toward Hiruzen Sarutobi, he pondered the location. On the way, I saw several mothers coming to send their children to Konoha. Whirlpool Tree didn't come, perhaps they were busy, or perhaps they didn't want to see this scene. But Akabane sensed something was subtly off about the atmosphere, and after thinking about it carefully. No. I've been tricked by those 2 old guys. The idea of temporarily staying at home and the special products of the Uzumaki clan are all lies to fool idiots, and the worst part is that I actually became that idiot. Page 51. He quickened his pace and hurried towards Hiruzen Sarutobi's location, but he hadn't arrived yet. Alright, everyone, go back now. We're all here, so we can set off. Hiruzen Sarutobi waved his hand, signaling the children's parents to leave. Teacher, Akabane is here too. Let's set off. It might take a long time to travel with the children. Orochimaru chimed in at the opportune moment. Okay, let's go. Kazama Saichi gave the signal, and the caravan set off. From beginning to end, Akabane was not given a moment to speak. As soon as he arrived, he saw Hiruzen Sarutobi walking ahead without looking back, looking like he was leading the charge to intimidate the evil forces. Hate it. That cunning old man is definitely no good. So what if he didn't give me a drawing? Akabane was indignant as he glanced at the caravan. Who knows what the caravan contains or the specialties that Hiruzen Sarutobi mentioned? If they actually throw back the specialties that others have offered to them from Uzushio village, they might be ostracized by the entire village. Then, Akabane glanced at the little girl who was following him anxiously, looking flustered. Alas, that's all. Akabane patted the little girl's head and sighed slightly. She had agreed to be tricked herself. Brother Akabane. It's all right, let's go. Even though his heart was bleeding, he could only comfort the little girl. Her father hadn't come yet, and he couldn't just leave her behind halfway. On the way back, Hiruzen Sarutobi revealed his true form. This is a warning: any traitorous ninja who dares to make a move will be met with the wrath of the ninja doctor. The First Shinobi World War had just ended, and Hiruzen Sarutobi's reputation was at its peak. He was not at the level of the 5 great village Kage, and few ninjas dared to provoke him. Therefore, everyone returned to the Land of Fire from Yuzushio village unharmed. However, when everyone returned to the Land of Fire and arrived at the Temple of Fire, Akabane saw a magnificent and splendid convoy. The conspicuous banner clearly belonged to the military guards, instantly revealing his identity, the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Hiruzen Sarutobi's pupils contracted slightly. He had considered that the daimyo might object, but he never expected that he would run into the daimyo's car on the way back. They came too fast. When the two convoys met, Kazama Satoshi didn't dare to block the way at all. He quickly moved to the sides and knelt down respectfully. Orochimaru and the others stood aside and greeted them respectfully in a half-kneeling position. Greetings, Your Excellency. Hiruzen Sarutobi salutes. The Shadow is the head of the village, but in name he is appointed by the daimyo and is considered to be under the daimyo's command. Oh, it's Hiruzen. I was just on my way to the fire temple when I ran into you. It's been so long since I've seen you, I've missed you. Why don't you come up and have a cup of tea? The voice of the great name came from the carriage. His voice was gentle and refined, possessing a unique persuasiveness that made people feel as if they were bathed in a spring breeze. Just by listening to his voice, many people would probably unconsciously believe what Diaming said. Thank you, Your Excellency. Hiruzen Sarutobi politely thanked him, then slowly approached the daimyo's carriage. Upon reaching the carriage, he nodded and smiled at the head guard. The head guard paused for a moment, then smiled and said, Lord Hokage, please. He then lowered the wooden ladder, lifted the curtain, and gestured for Hiruzen Sarutobi to come forward. Akabane watched the third generation go up, then lowered his head again. Coincidence? He doesn't believe it. Too many coincidences are no longer coincidences, and this seemingly accidental encounter is no exception. Perhaps it was a warning, or perhaps it was an exchange of benefits. In any case, the daimyo's intentions were very clear. He simply didn't want to strain the relationship between the Land of Fire and Konoha too much. After weighing the pros and cons, he chose to visit the fire temple under the guise of a trip, where he unexpectedly encountered Hiruzen Sarutobi. Hiruzen, I've heard some things about how you led your team to escort the caravan these past few days. I heard it was quite dangerous, which made me worry about your students. But seeing them all safe and sound today puts my mind at ease. Daming poured a cup of tea, smiled gently, and said, Thank you for your concern, Your Excellency. It was the students' youthful impetuosity that nearly led to their defeat at the hands of the rogue ninjas. Fortunately, they were highly talented and managed to hold on until my arrival. Sarutobi Hiruzen said. Is that right? Daming smiled, not taking it to heart, and changed the subject. By the way, who are those children? Your Excellency, the patriarch of the Uzumaki clan has taken a liking to Kurama Akabane of the Kurama clan and wishes to marry into the Kurama clan. That's why he sent a team back, and the other children came to visit relatives on the way. Hiruzen Sarutobi continued in his reply. I see. Speaking of Kurama Akabane, I've heard of that name before. He seems to be a pretty good young painter. I wonder which one he is. Daming nodded with a smile, then curiously peered out from the car. Did you see the most beautifully dressed red-haired girl? Her closest boy is Kurama Akabane. Hiruzen Sarutobi pointed him out directly. The little girl is very attached to Akabane. Although they're not inseparable, they can tell who's closer to whom at a glance. The daimyo glanced at it, chuckled, and then withdrew, saying, Last time, the marriage alliance with the Senju clan brought many years of prosperity to the Land of Whirlpools. This time, the marriage alliance with the Kurama clan, Well, they are a perfect match. Thank you for your praise. Hiruzen Sarutobi said with a faint smile. Marriage alliances can affect the rise and fall of a family, so it's best to be cautious. The Uzumaki clan has always had good judgment, and this time will likely be no exception, so I don't need to worry about it. Alright, I still need to go to the temple to offer incense, so as not to delay the Hokage's schedule. After saying his name, he picked up his teacup and took a sip. Yes, thank you, Your Excellency. Chapter 61. Did you sell me out? Oh no, I feel like I've been tricked. Akabane sensed the daimyo's gaze and immediately felt that the third Hokage might have tricked him again. Brother Akabane, they seem to be watching us. The little girl whispered. Not only his name, but also the guards around him. Akabane glanced around and saw the Uzumaki clan children surrounding Kiyotsuki, as well as the truck wrapped in red cloth, which further confirmed his suspicions. I got scammed. Boarding school, temporary surname change. His heart was bleeding, but the matter was already at a point where he had no choice but to act. Seeing the little girl's anxious eyes, he had to reassure her, it's all right. Lord Hokage will introduce you guests from the land of whirlpools to His Majesty the Daimyo. Oh, I see. Uzumaki Saigetsu is the daughter of the Uzumaki clan chief, and in a sense, she is also a princess of the Uzumaki clan and the land of whirlpools. In terms of identity, this explanation was plausible, and since the little girl trusted Akabane quite a bit, she didn't ask any further questions. Soon everyone saw the third generation get out of the car and stand aside. Not long after, the daimyo's carriage headed towards the fire temple. The two seemed to have reached some kind of consensus, and thus went their separate ways. Let's go back to the village. Hiruzen Sarutobi returned, looking relaxed. Akabane followed behind without saying a word. With so many children around, now was not the time to ask unnecessary questions. The two maintained a certain tacit understanding, and the group gradually relaxed only after reaching the outskirts of Konoha village. Once they enter Konoha territory, this is their domain. Any outside ninja who tries to make a move will not only face the wrath of the ninja doctor, but also the full force of Konoha's firepower. Even a starved camel is bigger than a horse, and besides, it wasn't just Konoha that suffered heavy losses in the First Great War. At that time, no other ninja village dared to provoke them. At this moment, Akabane stepped forward and asked in a low voice, Teacher, what exactly did you trade with the Uzumaki tree? If it's just a nominal stay, the daimyo won't have a way out, so we need to give him a way out while also giving him a guarantee. Hiruzen Sarutobi walked ahead, exhaling smoke from his mouth before speaking slowly. So, you sold me out? Akabane said through gritted teeth. In a sense, yes. Hiruzen Sarutobi said with a smile, but you didn't come away empty-handed. Do you remember the Uzumaki clan's specialty that I mentioned? Could it be? Akabane's eyes widened in disbelief. Yes, you guessed right, a sealing technique. Hiruzen Sarutobi said solemnly, the price paid by the Uzumaki clan is sealing techniques. Hiss. Akabane gasped. This was one of the assets that allowed the Uzumaki clan to survive, and they were actually willing to hand it over. But upon closer examination, this is actually another escape route for the Uzumaki clan. Possessing sealing techniques and the Uzumaki bloodline, even if the land of whirlpools were to perish, they could rely on Konoha to grow another Uzumaki clan. Compared to wiping out the entire clan, this cost is far less. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but secretly admire the whirlpool tree. Your Kurama clan's bloodline limit is very strong, but when the bloodline limit grows to a certain point, you should know what kind of mental monster that is. Hiruzen Sarutobi spoke slowly. Well, actually it's because of excessive mental strength, coupled with the abuse of power, that led to a split personality. Akabane offered his interpretation. In a sense, it can also be considered a mental demon. That's right, but if you have a sealing technique, your clan's problems will be greatly alleviated. Hiruzen Sarutobi uttered the second half of the sentence. Akabane understood his meaning. Every clan has its own secret techniques, such as the Nara clan's shadow imitation technique and the Inuzuka lineage's beast mimicry ninjutsu. Konoha has the right to know their characteristics and abilities, but not the right to plunder them for its own use. otherwise it would be at odds with all the ninja clans. The new Vortex clan has only a dozen or so children, but this does not affect the family's rightful power. Without a formal marriage, the Kurama clan cannot obtain the sealing technique. Older gingers are more spicy. The third generation is still young, but these methods are already enough to manipulate Akabane at will. Akabane hated this feeling, but he had to admit that achieving such a cooperation was entirely beneficial to him. You are truly wise. He gritted his teeth and admitted it, while offering a praise. It's just a few years older. Hiruzen Sarutobi chuckled as he smoked, ignoring the underlying resentment in his words. Akabane slowed his pace, and as he passed Tsunade, he heard her ask in a low voice, "What are you talking about? Did our teacher make some kind of deal?" Page 52. You can ask the teacher directly. Akabane sighed, unsure how to face her, and returned to Uzumaki Saigetsu's side in distress. The little girl didn't know what had happened, but she could sense that Akabane wasn't happy, so she was unhappy too and didn't dare to ask. It wasn't until they reached the gate that Akabane calmed down. He figured it out, it's only nominal anyway, he could just have his parents adopt him as their goddaughter later. You can still change your surname and stay at a boarding school. Perfect. Children, our Konoha village is just ahead, look. Hiruzen Sarutobi turned around, pointed to the gate, and said to the children. Hey, that logo looks just like ours. The one in the middle is also a vortex. So Konoha village looks exactly like the one in Akabane's drawing. These children, each with a comic book in hand, had already developed a curiosity about Konoha. Seeing the familiar vortex and the Konoha symbol now gave them an even stronger sense of belonging. While this may not allow them to truly integrate into Konoha, it prevents them from developing feelings of resistance or wanting to go home. Not only that, all the children looked at Akabane, chattering and asking about the meaning of the symbol. The Konoha symbol was established by the first Hokage and symbolizes the inseparable friendship between Konoha and the Uzumaki clan. Akabane smiled and said, in fact, the first generation's wife was an elder of your Uzumaki clan. Really? Even Uzumaki Saigetsu was somewhat surprised. It's true, my grandma's real name is Uzumaki Mito. Tsunade said smugly. So that's it. Tsunade's grandmother. Tsunade-nichan, is Granny Mito pretty? The children quickly forgot about their initial arrival and joined in the conversation. That's why we need to choose children. They are pure and innocent, and although they have their own thoughts, they are easily changed and influenced. We're going to see Grandma now, and when we do, please don't be surprised. Tsunade wore a captivating smile. She had great tolerance and patience for these children because she knew very well that they could not return to the land of whirlpools and that they would become part of Konoha in the future. Great! Great! Children never seem to have any worries, Akabane sighed inwardly, feeling a mix of unease and apprehension. As Kyatsuki's guardian, he was ordered by the third Hokage to go with him, and the other party was Mito Uzumaki. He hadn't thought about it before, but now Akabane felt that the scene was strange. Chapter 62 The Mother-in-Law Can't Help. The group of children followed Tsunade to the camp and were immediately stunned by the situation of the Senju clan. Have we come to the wrong place? One boy spoke his mind frankly. In the children's minds, the Senju clan represented the strongest family in the world, and their residences must be incredibly luxurious. But what they saw before them? An ordinary, old courtyard, without a gate or family markings. If it weren't for Tsunade leading the way, no outsider would have imagined that this was the once world-renowned Senju clan. My grandfather once said that our Senju clan doesn't do that kind of thing. Tsunade laughed heartily, but her expression instantly turned cold as she turned to Akabane, who was leading the way, and said, "Let's go, someone." I didn't do it willingly. I'm so upset. He sighed silently and led the way toward Mito Uzumaki's courtyard. If he could, Akabane wouldn't want to see her, but if he didn't come to pay his respects now, he would be the one to suffer next time. Well, I have to see him anyway. As he walked, he tried to comfort and encourage himself. Before even reaching the courtyard, just as Akabane turned the corner, he heard a sigh coming from inside. A certain child hasn't visited in a long time. I wonder if he brought any gifts. Sigh. I'm getting old, and I'm really not well liked anymore. Old? Who do you think you are, old man? Akabane felt a pang of resentment. She looked only 30, yet she always spoke like an old woman. It was truly. There were no substantial gifts, but there were a lot of special ones. He stepped into the courtyard and said irritably, "Oh, what's the gift?" Mito Uzumaki rocked back and forth in her chair, looking completely relaxed. Ta-da! The gift is here. After a shout, Tsunade jumped in from outside the door. The next second, clumps of red hair emerged from outside the door, followed by a series of unfamiliar yet adorable faces. These are all. Mito Uzumaki's face showed surprise, but after a moment of astonishment, she quickly regained her composure and calm. She smiled serenely, sat upright, and her demeanor and bearing revealed the spirit of a princess of the Whirlpool Kingdom and the wife of the god of ninjas. "Children, come here and let Grandma see you." Her expression was calm, but her slightly trembling hands betrayed the excitement in her heart. The group of children were somewhat timid, but Mito Uzumaki's beautiful appearance and red hair made them feel close to her. Before long, the little girl was the first to step forward and walk towards her. "Mother-in-law. Okay. I know, you are Xiao Qingyue. You are Manami, Shiharu." Mito Uzumaki had seen her. She had seen photos of all the children of the Uzumaki clan. His eyes swept across the faces, and he quickly matched each one with a name. Is it just them? She was somewhat disappointed, and a touch of sadness crept into her heart. Yes, only these 10 children will come to Konoha. Tsunade actually understood to some extent why these children came to Konoha. She understood Mito's feelings perfectly, but she couldn't show too much sadness in front of the child even though she herself was just a child. "Tsunade, do they all live here with us?" Mito Uzumaki's smile remained unchanged, but she paid even more attention to them. "No, Xiao Qingyue lives at Akabane's house." Tsunade said irritably. "What?" Mito Uzumaki was stunned, her gaze sweeping towards Akabane. What kind of operation is this? However, she quickly realized what she meant, and after a moment of silence, she nodded and said, "I understand." It's not a bad choice for Xiao Qingyue to stay with the Anma clan. She's very smart. She was just confused because she was worried. As the daughter of the clan leader, how could the daimyo allow her to live in Konoha if she didn't do it this way? Alright, let me show you around first, and point out where we live. Tsunade led the children away because she knew that Mito Uzumaki definitely had something to say to Akabane. The little girl followed Akabane, reluctant to leave. Go and see them. They're all your family here, so don't worry. Akabane patted her head. Ah. Whirlpool Moon turned around, then turned back to catch up with the main group. Mito Uzumaki lay back in her chair, her expression seemingly changing instantly. She rocked back and forth for a while before finally speaking. "Why is she so clingy to you? And when you were in Konoha, didn't you ever bother to come see me? You finally did come, but empty-handed. Where's your manga?" Akabane couldn't understand why Mito Uzumaki was so gentle to others, but treated him this way. Is it because he's handsome? At this moment, Mito Uzumaki sat up. Akabane was only 10 years old, and her height was just at eye level with Akabane, who was sitting down. Akabane stared at Akabane and said, "I don't know what you're thinking, but I feel it's rather rude." How could that be? I just wanted to surprise my mother-in-law. Akabane pulled out a manga from his pocket, chapter 11 to 15 of the manga he drew in Yuzashioka province, which he was just about to compile and send to Azumi Hiroshi Yamano. The original copy. Unfortunately, once it reached Mito Uzumaki, it was basically a waste of money. Oh, this is the original artwork. Mito Uzumaki's eyes lit up, and she immediately sat up, her tone instantly softening. "I wasn't wrong about you, you're a good kid." Real. A woman has at least 2 faces, otherwise she wouldn't be able to turn on someone so easily. Akabane muttered to himself, then bravely forced a smile. "Grandma, please remember to print a copy and send it to Mr. Yamano so he can print and distribute it as soon as possible." "Don't worry, child, Your mother-in-law will take care of this little thing for you, Mito said in a gentle tone. About Chingyue? Akabane hesitated for a moment, then finally asked. I'm quite relieved to leave Xiao Chingyue in your care. By the way, she mustn't pick up your laziness. As for the other one, they're both my children, and I can't help her with either, Mito Uzumaki said softly. What do I need your help with? Akabane was thinking, holy crap, holy crap. He hadn't even said a word, and this older woman had already filled in the blanks in her mind. Hey, you have to understand me. As a grandmother, I can't exactly tell her to be more tolerant, can I? Page 53. Mito Uzumaki sighed. Mother-in-law, please stop talking, really. Akabane admits that he has feelings for Tsunade, and Tsunade seems to have some feelings for him as well, but he really doesn't have many feelings for Kiyotsuki. It's just like a brother's feelings for his sister, perhaps with a touch of love for beautiful things as well. However, it seems unnecessary to tell Mito Uzumaki about these things. Women who have mastered the skill of filling in the blanks are terrifying. They can concoct thousands of stories in a matter of minutes. Can't afford it. Hey, if there's nothing else, go ahead. I'm going to read now, don't disturb my rest. Mito waved goodbye to the guests. Grandma Xia, I'll come to see you another day. Akabane felt as if he had been granted a pardon and fled. This terrifying woman was simply a devil in disguise. What a pity about my painting. He sighed inwardly, but then felt a little comforted by the thought of gaining an extra 300 points. 300 points are enough for him to exchange for the lowest tier Sharingan. Chapter 63. Dad said it was his wife. However, there is a problem with the Sharingan. Akaba is not an Uchiha, so can he turn it off freely? This is an unknown, perhaps only by exchanging the currency can we understand. This creates a vicious cycle. Unless he doesn't care about Konoha and intends to leave, he can't take the risk. Forget it, let's wait for the next volume to be released and see how the Uchiha react. Akabane shook his head, rejecting the thought in his mind. In the next volume, Kakashi's other eye will appear, perhaps to test the Uchiha's attitude. However, another thing to note is Danzo. What is his attitude after seeing this chapter? Everything is unknown. As Akabane handed over the third volume, he became seriously distracted and nearly bumped into Tsunade, who was returning with her child, around the corner. Have you finished talking to your mother-in-law? Tsunade was somewhat surprised. The two were talking faster than she had expected. We didn't really talk about anything. I'm taking Chingyue to the clan to arrange some things, Akabane said. Go ahead, we also need to make arrangements for other people. Tsunade did not try to stop her. In these extraordinary times, all other thoughts must be put aside, and we must first address the issues concerning these children of the Uzumaki clan. Akabane nodded and waved to Uzumaki Saigetsu. I'm leaving now. Come find me if you need anything. The little girl spoke to the other children in her innocent voice. Of the 10 children, she was the most gifted and also the most composed. Goodbye, Chingyue. After saying goodbye, the little girl walked over to Akabane's side. As she walked down the street, her eyes darted around, her hands trembling slightly. Don't be afraid, they won't dare to do anything to you. Akabane remained unmoved. Ah. Those who covet the Uzumaki bloodline are not only the Kirigakure ninja, but also Danzo. However, Akabane is not worried at all because the third generation will handle it. Go to the clan chief first and sort out your identity issue. You are my sister, so from today onwards, you may have to temporarily change your surname to Kurama, Akabane said as he walked. The little girl paused for a moment, then turned to look at him suspiciously and said, Daddy said it's his wife. What did that old geezer say to his daughter? Akabane felt an urge to strangle the whirlpool tree sea. A series of combined punches would force even the most innocent man to his knees. Fortunately, he was resolute and, facing those bright, watery eyes, decisively shook his head and denied it. She's just my sister. Don't worry about what your father says. Ah. She nodded and didn't say anything more. Akabane abandoned his underestimation of her, realizing that the little girl was actually quite precocious, seemingly naive but actually very perceptive. It's best to be on guard against certain things in the future. For example, taking blood. Whether the blood from the vortex can lower the points required for redemption remains to be tested by Akabane. Boo. Danzo, put away your roots. Danzo had barely begun making his preparations when the third Hokage, who had just returned, came knocking on his door. Hiruzen and Uzumaki Saigetsu are the most suitable targets for the next generation of Jinchuriki, and we should keep them in our grasp. Danzo said solemnly. No, she is the patriarch of the new Vortex clan, and her life cannot be lost. Hiruzen Sarutobi shook his head. Anyone can be a clan leader, but no one can be a Jinchuriki. Danzo coldly said, your pedantry and weakness will harm Konoha. I said, stop. Hiruzen Sarutobi shouted, his expression cold and fierce. You. Danzo clenched his fists, took a final deep breath, and sat down with a cold snort. Also, the Land of Waves is not suitable right now. Let Tsukumo and the others come back. Hiruzen Sarutobi continued. Hiruzen, you. Danzo suddenly stood up, his face full of anger. The 5 villages have just experienced war, and we cannot take any further actions. Secretly supporting Wachao village is the bottom line. Sarutobi Hiruzen said. Whose idea is this? I am the third Hokage. Hiruzen Sarutobi was unusually resolute, refusing to budge an inch. Whatever you say. Danzo clenched his fist, his resolve to take down the root organization strengthened. Is she Shao Qingyue? Chieftain Anmawoha looked at her strangely, examined her closely for a few moments, and then took out a scroll from underneath. Yes, Chieftain, but I wish to add her as my sister. Akabane said. Younger sister? Kurama was surprised, then held up the scroll and said, but this. Akabane took it and glanced at it. It contained many sealing techniques of the Uzumaki clan, each with its own seal and requiring a special incantation. He looked at the little girl and asked, can you unravel this scroll? The little girl glanced at the clan leader and shook her head slightly. It's okay, it's for you anyway. Kurama forced a smile, paused, and then said, since you insist, I will change her to your sister, but it's impossible for her to be added to the family tree. It's okay. Akabane doesn't care about the family tree, and it doesn't matter if he's not on it. If he is strong enough, he can form a clan on his own. If he is not strong enough, joining the Kurama clan will only make him a pawn. Okay, let's go settle in first. Kurama nodded and said nothing more. Akabane left with the scroll, leaving Kurama and the others in the shadows speechless. After walking for a long time outside the clan chief's house, Akabane turned back, his eyes cold. There was a second person in the room just now. Whirlpool Qingyue said in a low voice. I know. Akabane not only knew there was a second one, but he also knew that the other party was likely an Anbu member, no, to be precise, Root. The clan chief has a partnership with Gen. He became wary and categorized Anmawoha into the area of distrust. You must not go out while you are staying at my house. Akabane said seriously. I know. The little girl nodded slightly and followed them away. Hopefully, the third generation will be more efficient. Akabane touched the scroll. Not only is the Vortex bloodline hot, but this thing is also extremely difficult to handle. Forget it, they wouldn't go so far as to rob us outright. If they really wanted to, I wouldn't be one to back down either. He walked ahead, his steps slow. When he reached his front door, Akabane paused for a moment. Compared to the wealthy members of the Uzumaki clan, his own door was indeed not grand enough, no wonder those people would come to him through the window. Brother, is this our home? The little girl looked up. That's right, your godfather and godmother are also inside. Akabane patted her hair, then led the people into the house. Page 54. Kurama Chiaki and Kurama Saki were both there, but they were clearly unaware of what had happened. When Akabane brought Uzumaki Saigetsu in, they were stunned for a moment. She is? A few seconds later, Kurama Chiaki pointed at Kiyotsuki, his face full of confusion. My sister, you, new daughter. Akabane couldn't help but feel a little ashamed when he said the second half of his sentence. He himself was the adopted son of the time traveler, and now he has brought back an adopted daughter for them. Thinking about it carefully, he really feels sorry for them. Daughter? Kurama Saki paused for a moment, then quickly reacted and said warmly, bring her in first. She must be tired from the journey back. Let her take a shower and change her clothes first. She knew that she couldn't ask any more questions in front of the child, there would be plenty of opportunities later. Thanks. The little girl said thank you, but hesitated and didn't say the last two words. Chapter 64 Uchiha's Eyes. Sharingan, and from an outsider. This is going to be a big problem. Mito sighed. She didn't understand Akabane's thinking. Knowing full well what kind of people the Uchiha were, he still insisted on writing such suicidal content. With the release of the third volume, the Uchiha clan will probably be restless. She hesitated, wondering whether to suppress the manuscript at hand and prevent the third volume from being published. Forget it, it's just a young person's business. I can't figure it out. Let him be. After much deliberation, Mito Uzumaki ultimately decided not to withhold the manuscript. Instead, as Akabane had suggested, she printed the second volume of the book in its entirety and then had the printed copy delivered to the arsenal by messenger. Akabane was unaware of Mito Uzumaki's inner turmoil, but he was certain that Mito Uzumaki had already finished reading the 5 chapters because the points had been credited to her account. With 300 points plus the original 100 plus points, he now has over 400 points. 400 points are practically useless right now. Currently, the only items available for exchange, besides the Sharingan and the half-immortal physique, are Water Clone Technique, Water Prison Technique, Water Dragon Bullet Technique, and Great Waterfall Technique. This version of the Water Dragon Bullet is terrible. After using up a whole bunch of seals, my ninjutsu hand was practically cramping up. As for the technique of the Great Waterfall, it's good, but unfortunately it requires 500 points. Akabane clicked his tongue in regret and switched to Water Clone and Water Prison Technique. The Water Prison Technique is both offensive and defensive, making it quite useful to him. He manipulates his 5 senses through paintings, and he can paint with one hand while maintaining the Water Prison Technique with the other. After exchanging for the Water Prison Technique and Water Regeneration, I also exchanged 6 points for Physique, bringing my Physique to a round number of 30. We've already reached the Chunin rank. At this moment, Akabane noticed that his rank had reached the Chunin level. However, to be specific, he didn't feel much change, it seemed to be just an evaluation. Don't you even know how to show some concern? While he was studying, his clone, who was drawing beside him, couldn't help but say something. What's there to care about? Forget it, I deserve to be single. The clone gave a curt sneer, then paused and said, have you thought about how to deal with the Uchiha? Not yet, I'm about to have a heart-to-heart talk with my teacher. Akabane said it very directly. Ah. With a soft chuckle, the clone said no more. To prevent eavesdropping, further discussions were not conducted. Akabane stood up, preparing to head to the location of the Ambu. Logically, once he finished dealing with Xiao Qingyue's matter, he should have gone to pay a visit to Danzo. But once he was in bed, he didn't want to move at all, and it wasn't until the afternoon that he managed to muster up a little energy. Downstairs, Xiao Qingyue got along quite well with her parents. Although they can't be called godfather or godmother yet, it's enough to make the two elders extremely happy. Akabane smiled slightly and said, I'm going out to see my teacher. It is good. Brother, take care on your journey. Ah. And just like that, I got a little sister. Akabane sighed slightly, then slowly walked onto the street, heading towards Danzo. He passed by a comic book store and saw many people go in and take a comic book with them when they came out. His thriving business in Konoha offered some consolation for his setback in the land of whirlpools. Not long after he left, he arrived at a relatively secluded spot, where a figure suddenly landed in front of him. Kurama Akabane, Lord Danzo requests your presence. The black clothes and mask belong to the Dark Division. "Hey, Night Dance, you've joined the Dark Division." Akabane greeted them weakly. Instantly, the atmosphere fell into a deathly silence. Cough cough. "You can recognize this?" Yiwu couldn't help but cough a few times, looking quite annoyed. The voice still needs to be disguised. Akabane shrugged and offered a simple reminder. Being able to enter the Dark Division for training speaks volumes about Yiwu's strength, and his disguise wasn't actually a big problem. Ultimately, it was his weak body that caused his voice to sound feeble. This characteristic, combined with the familiar voice, naturally made it easy to guess what was going on. "Okay, come with me." Moonlight Night Dance is not yet a formal ANBU ninja, she is currently in a semi-probationary period. One after the other, the two soon arrived outside the Dark Division. "Lord Danzo is just ahead. You can go in by yourself." Moonlight Dance pointed out the way, then nodded slightly, formed a hand seal, and instantly left. He entered through the cave, rounded a corner, and saw the sunlight. He had made it through. As he stepped out of the cave, he was slightly startled. The environment of the Dark Division is relatively harsh, usually located underground, in prisons, or in caves. But this place is beautiful with clear waters and surrounded by high mountains, which is really unlike the Dark Division's usual style. "This is..." "You seem a little surprised." Danzo appeared silently. He was skilled in swordsmanship, wind release, and assassination, so it was not difficult for him to perfectly conceal his footsteps and aura. "No, I just didn't expect the location of the Dark Division to be so beautiful." Akabane forced a smile and said, "No, this isn't the Dark Division, this is the route." Danzo said calmly. Akabane almost cried out, but thankfully recovered in time and asked in surprise, "Root?" "Konoha is a great tree. Beneath its magnificent appearance lies countless roots hidden deep underground. This is my philosophy, and this place is the testing ground for those roots." Danzo was unusually patient, talking as he walked inside. Clearly, he had been waiting for Akabane to arrive. "Teacher, why are you saying all this to me?" Akabane felt uneasy, knowing that the more you knew, the faster you would die, and he now deeply understood this feeling. "You came to see me because of the contents of the third volume of the comic, right?" Danzo took out a book. Akabane glanced at it and realized that this was not the original book. It was probably a printed copy that Danzo had stolen through some means. He gave an awkward smile and said, "Nothing can be hidden from the teacher." "Knowing it's dangerous, why do it anyway?" Danzo said with a cold laugh. "No, I just hope the teacher won't interfere." Akabane shook his head and said, "Why are you testing the Uchiha clan?" "Because I was curious about what would happen to the eyes of Uchiha people when they were on other people." Faced with Danzo's questions, Akabane simply replied, "Will its ability still exist? Are there any side effects? Will its power be weaker than the original version? I want to know all of these things." Danzo did not answer, but silently walked forward step by step. The two walked from outside the cave into the basin, where Akabane finally saw Root's training base. It's a very small operation, with at most a dozen or so people. It seems that Danzo was not doing well now, and his power is far less than it was later. Akabane thought to himself. At this moment, Danzo broke the silence and continued, "Your idea is dangerous. So I wanted to test the waters, but it was just a thought, I haven't actually done anything about it." Akabane said, "You have insulted the Uchiha's bloodline." Danzo chuckled softly, "They are extremely emotional and absolutely capable of doing something like this." He had no good feelings towards the Uchiha clan, and even felt a bit of disgust towards them. This aversion stemmed partly from himself, but mostly from Tobirama Senju, the second Hokage, who was also wary of the Uchiha clan and was Danzo's teacher. The teacher's emotions were extreme, as if he knew some secret. "You can go ahead and do it. If the Uchiha higher-ups try to cause trouble, I'll help you." Danzo didn't answer his question, but instead made a definitive statement, ending the conversation. "Next, you will have to pay your dues. It is my honor to serve the teacher." Cooperation achieved. Chapter 65. Chapter 65: The Tree and Its Roots. Our base was established not long ago, and we implemented rigorous training and assessments, resulting in a very high loss rate. Danzo said slowly, in order to minimize some losses, I need your illusion magic. 5 senses control? That's right, a technique that makes them experience life and death repeatedly, and each time they have to have a real feeling of death but without causing any harm. Danzo nodded. No problem, it's very simple. Akabane readily agreed, but a growing doubt began to form in his mind. How did Danzo know? The Naruto technique, which combines the manipulation of the 5 senses, is itself a failure. Few among the Kurama clan knew about it, let alone outsiders, and even fewer knew that Akabane had studied and practiced it. After thinking it over, a name came to mind. Orochimaru and Danzo have teamed up? Akabane pondered for a moment, then quickly rejected the idea. At this point, Orochimaru had no leverage to cooperate with Danzo, it was likely just Danzo's investment and underhanded maneuvering. Then comes the problem. Was Danzo's revelation of this clue intentional or unintentional? This is why he doesn't like being with Danzo. That old man is cunning and full of bad intentions, being with him makes you have to think things through for ages. After agonizing over it for a while, Akabane simply gave up and stopped thinking about it. There's no need to worry too much about Orochimaru for now, the priority is to deal with Danzo. He followed Danzo into the simple courtyard, and then heard the sound of metal clashing. The sounds of kunai and shuriken. He had only been a ninja for a month or so, but he immediately recognized what kind of weapon it was. Do I need to wear a mask? Danzo asked calmly. Manipulation of the 5 senses, is there anyone else in Konoha who can do that? Akabane shook his head. What's the point of wearing a mask? It's just like burying your head in the sand. Then everyone, assemble. Danzo walked in, leaning on his sword, with Akabane by his side. The entire room fell silent instantly, and in the blink of an eye, everyone gathered in front of him. This is the root. Akabane glanced around. Although he couldn't tell anything from their appearances alone, he could still discern their backgrounds from the subtle differences in their attire. 2 members of the Aburane clan, one from the Hyuga clan, and another large-sized person who was probably from the Akimichi clan. As for the remaining dozen or so, I really couldn't tell. You should all know him. He will now cast an illusion on you. Danzo said this with a cold smile. You should understand what the Kurama clan's illusions are. You will experience the death you fear most. Anyone who cannot bear it can leave now. The room fell silent, no one stepped forward. Akabane pursed his lips slightly. He didn't know how Danzo brainwashed him, perhaps using the root rhetoric, but one thing he was very clear about was that no harm did not mean no one could be killed. Alright, since no one is quitting, please give up the resistance. He continued. Akabane stood there, adjusting his state and mobilizing the chakra within his body. As everyone sat down, he formed a hand seal, completing it in the blink of an eye. The Naruto technique. After a surge of chakra, everyone stopped moving. Teacher, the Naruto technique can be fatal even if used multiple times. Akabane reminded. The Naruto technique can see the deepest fears in people's hearts. Those with weak wills may experience their true fears repeatedly, which could lead to mental death, that is, a vegetative state. I know, but this is the best way to minimize the losses. Danzo was silent for a moment, then said softly, the root has never been the light. Yes, teacher, you're right, that makes a lot of sense. Akabane said casually. He didn't quite agree with Danzo's ideas, but he also disliked Hiruzen Sarutobi's approach. Besides, this was Root, Danzo's territory. Ah, little fox. Danzo sneered, but secretly he felt a sense of satisfaction. The 3rd generation wanted to use a 2-pronged approach to bring the 2 most talented individuals under his control, but little did they know that neither of them would accept his methods. In the end, it was all for nothing. As time passed, the illusion gradually reached its most terrifying stage, and screams echoed throughout the valley. 1 second, 2 seconds later, everyone woke up, all covered in cold sweat. Take a break. Danzo said calmly. Sir, we can still. My order is to rest. Danzo repeated it sternly. Yes. Thank you, sir. The group sat down, panting heavily. Akabane felt a pang of sympathy. Danzo had truly mastered the art of torturing people. If illusions are used repeatedly, they will only become numb and break down after repeated use. While it may seem like we're giving them a rest now, the real pain caused by the manipulation of their five senses will actually make their memories and fears more profound during this time. And these fears will amplify the effects of the next use of the technique. For example, right now, everyone feels that the pain of dying is real. The way they looked at Akabane was tinged with fear. Awful. After a sigh, he composed himself and pondered how to use the technique to maximize its effect. Okay, use the illusion technique once, then proceed with the guidance. Akabane thought for a moment and made a decision. A few minutes later, he used the illusion magic a second time, and a few minutes after that, everyone woke up. Rest. Danzo uttered two words. Akabane sat down, as if about to start a conversation. Many of you are among the elite of the elite, you have been on the battlefield and killed people, you are not afraid of death itself. I hope you understand what the meaning of the root is. A crowd turned to look, some listening intently, others questioning or secretly mocking. Konoha is a great tree. What happens to a great tree without roots? Imagine that you are the roots, and your families are the tree, the fruit on the tree, or the birds that perch on it. When the roots are gone, the leaves will be crushed. What a scene that would be. As Akabane finished speaking, his hands suddenly formed a hand seal, the Naruto technique. Imagine, and other scenarios will emerge. Previously, they might have only seen themselves die in battle, commit suicide due to mission failure, or experience various fears in their hearts, but this time, they will see the deaths of their family members. No. I'll kill you all, I'll kill you all. Fear, anger, sadness, a jumble of sounds and emotions emanated from his words. Danzo remained silent for a moment, then finally burst out laughing. After a long while, he looked at Akabane and said, "Are you interested in joining Root?" When he said he was joining, he was not referring to becoming an ordinary member, but rather hinting at the position of successor. However, "Teacher, I am not suitable. Please find someone else." Akabane waved his hands repeatedly. You can fool others with these kinds of words, but you can't let yourself fall into them. Is this a place for humans to live? Danzo's death was not unexpected, but it was still a great pity. Then, he chuckled and said, "It's all right, who can predict the future?" Akabane glanced at him, a hint of surprise in her eyes. Look how moved he is. Could it be that his words have fooled Danzo as well? No way. As he was pondering this, his eyes darted around aimlessly, when he suddenly noticed something was wrong with one of the people and immediately said, "Oh no. Teacher, wake up the person on the far left in the second row." Danzo suddenly appeared beside him, patted the other's head, and used the technique of dispelling illusions to instantly break the illusion. However, after he woke up, he kept shouting, and the shadow on his body expanded wildly, trying to control everything around him. Oh! After a chop to the neck, Danzo used his body as a shield. He was just trapped in the depths of an illusion, thank goodness. Akabane took a deep breath, feeling somewhat apprehensive. Intelligent people always think more. Danzo was disappointed and somewhat disheartened. Let's dispel the illusion and let them rest. Yes. Akabane instantly formed hand seals to dispel the illusion. As expected, everyone broke free of the illusion, and their emotions were all somewhat off. However, most people quickly calmed down after seeing Danzo and Akabane, with only a small number, like the one from the Nara family, almost going berserk. Training is over for today, everyone take a break. Chapter 66, Volume 3, The Sharingan. After the illusion training, Akabane will not need to go again for at least 3 days. Although there was a price to pay, Danzo took the blame, so it was a very worthwhile deal. Once the comics arrive, we can start selling them immediately, although it may take 2 or 3 days. Page 56. Akabane did not leave Konoha for 2 days. On the one hand, he had to spend time with his family, and from time to time he had to go out and lend a hand to Danzo. On the other hand, from the encounter with Sabuza to the successful construction of the bridge, it is a long and continuous storyline. In order to maintain the popularity, he needs to rush to complete the production and update it as soon as possible. Therefore, on the third day, Akabane had just gotten up when Kurama Unro was already waiting below. Lord Akabane, Mr. Yamano has arrived. Okay, I'll be right there. Akabane rubbed his temples to relieve his mental fatigue. After washing up, he rushed to the comic book shop. When we arrived at the shop, the factory workers had already stacked the books one by one onto the shelves. Lord Akabane, what have you gained during this period? Just give the money to my parents directly, you keep this. Akabane handed over the entire fourth volume, which he had just finished yesterday, to Yamano Izumi. The fourth volume? Yamano Izumi took a look. This connects perfectly to the previous chapter, where Zabuza was killed. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. It was actually completed so quickly this time, it was simply unbelievable. Yes, print this many copies for me within 3 days. Also, if your partner caravans are willing to help sell them, I can give them a 20% to 30% commission. Akabane said. There are some caravans. Okay, I'll ask about it later. Yamano Izumi nodded in agreement. Their main business was arsenal, so their caravans were no ordinary caravans. Some of these caravans came from the Land of Fire, while others came from neighboring countries that were on friendly terms with the Land of Fire. Then I'll trouble you, Mr. Yamano. Since it's in such a rush, I'll go back to the factory immediately and have them continue working. Shan Yechuan Hong nodded and told his group of men to leave. Akabane sat down in front of the door, took out his sketchbook and brushes, and, just like before in Yuzushio village, sat down and began to draw on the street. Not long after. Oh, Akabane's back? Looking up, I saw that this time it wasn't Nara Shikamaru, but Inuzuka Stone. Inuzuka Ishii was their classmate who graduated at the same time. He didn't get along with Akabane, but they both knew Tsukumo, so they became acquainted indirectly. I came back 3 days ago and am planning to rest for a while. Akabane glanced at it and answered casually. For the Inuzuka family, their greatest hobby is raising dogs, and their most important thing is still raising dogs. Comics? Non-existent. Inuzuka Ishii glanced at the comic book shop, a look of hesitation on his face. Just as Akabane had thought, he had never bought it, he had only seen the contents in a friend's possession. Now that I happen to be passing by, I can't help but feel conflicted. Is this the third volume that's going on sale today? His eyes lit up, and after a few glances, he immediately noticed that the cover was different from the previous one. New comics. Yes, it was sent over immediately after it was printed. Akabane answered without hesitation. Inuzuka Ishii walked over from a distance, pulling his dog along, and peered at the stall. Seeing Naruto's performance, he couldn't help but laugh. What an idiot, but his recovery ability is terrifying. The Land of Waves. Come to think of it, I've never left Konoha village. Inuzuka Ishii casually tossed down 100 yen bill, then sat down at the stall, reading manga while watching Akabane draw posters on the spot. It's too dangerous to go out, it's better to stay in the village. Akabane sighed. All these people had ambitions and were eager to leave, while he, a lazy bum, just wanted to come back. Danger? I don't think so, this kind of opponent. As Inuzuka Ishigaki was speaking, he saw a sword shadow fly over from the manga. Zabuza, here he comes. The sword, as large as a door panel, looks terrifying just from the painting. He took a deep breath, swallowing back the words he had just begun to say, and then he saw Kakashi's hand on his headband. What's under the headband? Inuzuka Ishii couldn't help but ask. You'll see it when you scroll down. After finishing one poster, Akabane picked up a blank sheet of paper and quickly drew the second one. He could have just given up after finishing one drawing, but since Inuzuka Ishii, who had been a freeloader, had reformed, he decided to give one away for free. As for the content, let's just talk about Kiba Inuzuka and Akamaru. He was about to put pen to paper when suddenly. Ah! Yes, it's the Sharingan. Inuzuka Ishii shouted, his face filled with horror. The Sharingan is something the Uchiha clan values most. Since the village was founded, they have maintained endogamy and were unwilling to let their bloodline flow out. But now, Shiyu has actually painted it onto a person from another tribe in his painting. He was surprised, but more worried. Even if it's just a comic, given the Uchiha clan style, it's likely to cause a huge mess. Don't make a fuss, stay calm. Akabane glanced at him, then prepared to continue drawing. But Inuzuka Ishii stood up, his face solemn, and said, Akaba, while there aren't many buyers yet, hurry up and take it back and change it, otherwise. There's no problem, don't worry. Akabane was helpless. Even though it's for my own good, I've already gotten past Danzo, so what's there to be afraid of? I'm leaving first. Inuzuka Ishii put away the book and hurriedly led the dog away. Ah. Akabane paused for a moment, then sighed softly. Even if they're afraid of being caught in the crossfire, there's no need to rush like this. The Uchiha clan members aren't going to just drop from the sky. He sat there, thought for a moment, and then felt relieved. The Uchiha clan is indeed the dominant force in the village now, so it's not surprising that Inuzuka Ishii is wary of them. Why are you walking so fast? Just as Akabane was about to draw the next picture, he suddenly heard a voice coming from behind him. Turning my head, I saw. Hey, Jiraiya? He didn't even notice that this guy's Earth is a technique for using Earth-based magic, and concealment of his presence have improved a lot. It's nothing, I just bought the comic and left. Akabane brushed it off in one sentence, not intending to complain to others. Huh, the third volume? Give me one too. Jiraiya emerged, took a comic book from the shelf, and then threw down 100 ryo. After taking the comic, he immediately vanished using earth magic. A moment later, he reappeared, grinning, and said, "Oh right, I was distracted and forgot. Akabane, my earth escape technique is still pretty good, isn't it?" Great progress. Really? Akabane knew that this guy had come specifically to show off. He, I have something to do, goodbye. Jiraiya laughed heartily, then waved and left, presumably to find Orochimaru. After that, he sat for a long time. Yunlang, has our shop's business always been like this, sometimes on and sometimes off? Akabane was somewhat speechless. He had thought business was booming, but in reality, people were arriving gradually. During the day, people are busy with tasks and work, and some people don't even know that our goods have arrived, so there will be fewer people. There will be a peak around the evening. Kurama Yunlang explained. Looks like we need to set a fixed opening time and do some advertising while we're at it. Akabane thought to himself. He was in Wachao village when the second volume was released and had no idea what was going on. Now it seems that many people don't even know that the comic has been updated. However, by evening, it is estimated that a large number of people will have bought the comics. At the latest, the Uchiha clan will take corresponding action by tomorrow. No rush, this gives us an extra day to prepare. Chapter 67 Uchiha Emergency Meeting. Chief, someone left this outside the door. What? Uchiha Genkai frowned. He's already a chunin, why is he still so flustered? Chief, look. He used his teleportation technique to rush over, and once in the courtyard, he took out a book wrapped in black cloth from his pocket. Unfold the black cloth, it's a picture book. On the cover is a man wearing a mask, his headband obscuring his left eye. He looks handsome and aloof. What does Kurama's kids manga have to do with us? Uchiha Genkai didn't understand. I took it and flipped through a few pages, but since I hadn't read the story before, I had no idea what it was about. That's why he flipped through it so quickly. Not long after, episode 12. Page 57. Okay? Instantly, the chakra energy surged forth. Uchiha Genkai was furious, and the sides of his nose trembled slightly. Yuan-hai, what's wrong? His wife sensed his presence and came out to ask him questions, puzzled. It's nothing, a member of the clan just wanted to talk to me about something. Uchiha Genkai replied. However, turning around again, he discovered where was the chunin from before. Gone. He paused for a moment, then looked at the picture book in his hand. A shadow clone, huh? Just to get this picture book into my hands? What's his purpose? Uchiha Genkai's brain was racing. It's just a picture book, the story itself is fictional. Don't make a fuss about holding a family meeting because of it. However, this masked ninja appears to be named Kakashi Hatake, and is clearly a foreigner. An outsider, yet he possesses a Sharingan. Manga, Kurama Akabane, Danzo. Okay? He thought about each point one by one, and suddenly his expression changed. The Uchiha clan's ability to remain a part of Konoha was largely due to their Sharingan. If outsiders could also use the Sharingan, could the Uchiha clan still maintain its superior status? Hypnosis, replication, illusion. The Sharingan's functions are perfectly manifested in Kakashi. Even though it's just a manga, if everyone in Konoha had this thought, then the Uchiha clan would be in real danger. Chief, there's a brat. At that moment, someone rushed over. Uchiha Genkai looked up and saw Uchiha Ryo's father, Uchiha-en. He was taken aback when he saw the picture book in the clan chief's hand, then scratched his head and said, "Clan chief, you already know?" A stranger brought it over specially. Uchiha Genkai calmly said, "Pass down the word and convene an emergency meeting." Yes. Uchiha-en immediately left. Before long, all the elders and key members of the Uchiha clan had gathered. Because of their hostility towards the Kurama clan, very few people in the entire Uchiha clan had ever read the manga. Most of these elders and jonin had never even seen it. Uchiha Genkai distributed the newly printed pages, then sat in the main seat without saying a word. A moment later. This brat is too presumptuous, daring to portray our Uchiha clan like this in a story. Chieftain, this is an insult. The Hokage must punish him severely, or our clan will lose all face. The meeting room erupted in chaos. Uchiha Genkai closed his eyes and remained silent, and gradually many people quieted down. At this moment, Uchiha-en hesitated and asked, "Clan leader, is this really just a story conjectured by a brat? What do you think?" It doesn't seem like mere speculation. That kid appears to be Danzo's disciple. Uchiha Genkai nodded and stood up. After scanning the area, everyone quickly fell silent, and then he continued, "This is very likely Danzo's test, and also a warning. Common people are foolish. If the vast majority of people think that the Uchiha can be replaced, then even if Danzo takes action, it will not cause much of a disturbance or opposition." An elder who had remained silent until then spoke up. The Uchiha received special privileges as members of the guard, but they were also separated from the Konoha populace. Of course, they looked down on ordinary people and disdained to associate with them. If Danzo uses this to threaten us, we can totally join forces with the Hyuga. After pondering for a moment, one of the elders came up with a solution. The Hyuga clan, who also relied on ocular techniques, would face the same predicament. Elder, the Hyuga clan will not join forces. Uchiha Genkai sighed, they have a branch family, and the Hyuga clan is far more obedient than the Uchiha. As long as Konoha doesn't lose its mind, it won't take action against the Hyuga clan. Instead, it will protect the Hyuga clan's power and use this as a way to balance the Uchiha clan's power. If that's the case, why should the Hyuga clan worry? However, among those present were too many people who hated Konoha and Danzo, so he could only keep these words to himself and could not say them aloud. "Yen, go and teach that brat a lesson, and test Danzo's reaction," an elder said. Yes, they must be taught a lesson. Let's test the waters first and see what the other party does next. His decision was supported by many people. The others thought about it for a moment and felt that there was no loss in doing so. At most they would be scolded, so they nodded. Uchiha Genkai looked around and sighed, "Let's do it this way." The arrogant and conceited Uchiha. However, the distorted family meeting system after Ban's betrayal meant that this place was not a place where the patriarch could have absolute authority. Jing, I wish you were still alive. If his brother hadn't died, things might have been completely different. The next day, Akabane was about to lie down for a while longer when he heard a rustling sound at the window early in the morning, and a figure jumped in through the window. "Who is it, huh? Holy crap! He was a little dazed at first, but the moment he opened his eyes, he immediately sat up and covered his body with the blanket. Hey, we're all so familiar with each other, there's no need to make such a fuss. Tsunade glanced at the bed, a slight smile appearing on her face, then waved her hand weakly as a greeting. What are you doing here so early in the morning? And besides, my house has a front door, you know? Akabane was getting a little angry. Mornings are a good time to sleep in, but because she climbed out the window, now everything is gone. I just saw your latest plot. You're too audacious, making such a fuss about the Uchiha clan's eyes. Be careful you don't cause a huge mess. It's so old-fashioned, Tsunade said in a very mature tone. Well, it's just a comic book. Also, could you please leave? I need to change my clothes. Akabane waved his hand and then said weakly. It doesn't matter, we are comrades who have entrusted each other with life and death. Tsunade said with a smile. Fine, I can't do anything with you. He sighed, grabbed the clothes to change into, and started changing. I have to go to the comic book store later. Do you have anything else to do? It's nothing, but I'm curious, you knew what the consequences of doing this would be, didn't you? And then? Within seconds, Akabane was dressed. He looked indifferent, judging by the time, the Uchiha should have received the news by now. You know the Uchiha will come looking for trouble, and you still want to go out? Yes, I'm not one to be trifled with either. Akabane said calmly. Although it's unclear what Danzo will do, since he's made a promise, he'll definitely warn the Uchiha. If only 1 or 2 Uchiha clan members come, it means the Uchiha clan has backed down. At that time, even if a fight breaks out, it will only be a minor skirmish with no risk whatsoever. Chapter 68 Seeds of Suspicion. In that case, I'll go watch the excitement too. Tsunade continued speaking, completely unaware of Akabane's suggestive glances. A few seconds later, Akabane lowered his head and said, I need to wash up. Could you please make way for me? I'll wait for you outside. After Tsunade finished speaking, she opened the window and quietly climbed out. Sigh, it seems like this habit of climbing through windows started with her. Akabane sighed helplessly, then silently got up to wash up. After a long while, he finished washing up and left the clan's territory to go to the comic book shop. When he arrived with Tsunade, several people who had bought books were leaving the comic book shop one after another. However, it's clear that the Uchiha clan hasn't arrived yet. If it weren't for Tsunade, I could have slept a little longer. What are you complaining about? It's just... Kurama Akabane, you finally arrived. Okay? Following the sound, Akabane saw a man dressed in a round fan-shaped robe slowly walking out from the street ahead. Judging from his attire, he's at least a chunin, and more importantly, his appearance is very familiar to Akabane. He pondered for a moment, thinking of someone he resembled. Is he the father of that guy from last time? I thought for a long time, but I still couldn't remember the name. Ling is my son. Uchiha said calmly, if you think you can anger me like this, you're wrong. Don't get me wrong, I'm just a peace-loving cartoonist. Akabane smiled and waved his hand. Loves peace. Tsunade was speechless. If she still believed such nonsense, she would be as stupid as Jiraiya. Heh, I've come here today hoping you'll revise the latest chapter's plot. We Uchiha are not people who can be insulted. Page 58. Insult? Uncle, it's just drawing. Akabane said with a smile. Then I'll have to teach you a lesson. Uchihan's expression changed instantly. Is it just a painting? After a few words, this kid became emboldened, clearly having someone backing him up. Danzo's plan started with the kid's comics, so let's end it with him. We'll risk our lives to kill him. He already harbored murderous intent. Akaba, something's not right. Tsunade's expression gradually changed. Even if you kill me, the comic won't stop. Besides, it's just part of the story. Akabane said, squinting. Just try and you will find out. The Sharingan swirled around Uchihan's eyes, indicating that his Sharingan had been activated. I'll show you the power of these eyes. Oh, really? Why do you think I'm talking so much nonsense? Akabane sneered. Tsunade was a little confused, but then she noticed that Uchiha-en was standing there motionless. Been under an illusion? When? Just as Tsunade was wondering what was going on, she caught a glimpse of a figure secretly drawing inside the shop. You're so insidious. She couldn't help but complain, isn't this a sneak attack? He wanted me dead, so it's not unreasonable for me to launch a sneak attack, is it? 3 Megatama? Just make sure he doesn't see it, then it's all settled. A cold glint appeared in Akabane's eyes. Should he make a move? If he did, he could kill Uchiha-en while he was still injured. That's enough, Kurama Akabane. The familiar voice was unusually cold, and the slowly emerging figure brought Akabane's thoughts to a halt. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. Bang! The shadow clone standing in front disappeared, and at the same time, Akabane dispelled the illusion. Ah! With a scream, Uchiha-en covered his eyes, a drop of blood flowing from the corner of his eye. To have fallen for that brat's illusion is utterly disgraceful. However, this kid's strength and cunning are beyond imagination. He's practically like a second Danzo. The feeling of forcibly breaking through the illusion was quite nice, wasn't it? Akabane chuckled softly. Uchiha-en's mental strength is very strong. If he hadn't been ambushed, he would have definitely suffered a loss. However, the opponent was a Jonin, and also an Uchiha who boasted of being able to break all genjutsu. This move had already put Uchiha-en in a very awkward position. Kid, I want. Uchiha-en, instead of being in charge of security, what are you doing here causing trouble? Hiruzen Sarutobi rebuked angrily. Lord Hokage. It was only then that Uchiha-en realized that Hiruzen Sarutobi was right there. His face turned pale. With the appearance of the Hokage, neither a test nor a genuine desire to perish together could proceed. Akaba, come here. The third generation clone disappeared, but the fight was clearly over. Kurama Akabane, you'd better stop this soon. Uchiha-en paused mid-sentence, seemingly thinking about the battle just now. If Akabane had killed him, would he have survived? Having been driven to this point by a mere brat, what else is there to say? Thinking of this, he swallowed the rest of his sentence and left silently. Seeing the other person leave, Tsunade breathed a sigh of relief but also secretly worried, saying, "This is the first time I've seen the teacher so angry." Nothing serious will happen. I'll go first. Akabane replied. He wouldn't believe it if I said the third generation didn't observe secretly. With the wisdom of the third generation, as long as one sees the plot and combines it with the actions of Danzo and Akabane, one can also figure out these things. Therefore, the final result was within our control and did not deviate too much from our expectations. I just don't know what the third generation wanted to say when they called me over. Akabane secretly guessed what was going on, and before he knew it, he had arrived at the foot of the Hokage building. When he looked up, he saw a pair of eyes looking down from the building. Danzo Shimura. He paused for a second or two, waiting for Danzo to turn around, before continuing into the building. When I got to the second floor, I ran into Danzo. Don't forget to come to class, you still have training today. Danzo left a message, then slowly went downstairs and left. Hearing this, Akabane felt much relieved. It seemed that Danzo had kept his promise and taken the blame. Dong dong dong. Come in. After gently knocking on the door and receiving a reply, Akabane pushed the door open and entered, bowing slightly to Hiruzen Sarutobi. Kurama Akabane, why did you do this? Hiruzen Sarutobi said coldly. Lord Hokage, the Uchiha are too arrogant. They have forgotten Konoha and its common people. They have almost become another ninja village in Konoha. Before the third generation, Akabane dared not give a perfunctory answer. Even so, you shouldn't have done that. You've disrupted the peace of the village. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood up agitatedly and said angrily. Akabane remained silent. Danzo and the third Hokage must have had a disagreement, so not answering at this point is the best response. You must stop the comic, this part of the story needs to be changed. After a moment of silence, Hiruzen Sarutobi spoke. Lord Hokage, the seeds of suspicion have already been sown. Besides, I didn't even draw anything, I only said that the Sharingan appeared on a foreigner. Isn't this enough? You want to force the Uchiha to rebel? After an argument, the third generation sat in a chair, their eyes filled with disappointment. After a moment, the third Hokage continued, this matter must be resolved, by any means necessary. If we can change the plot, that would be best. If not, we must restrict the Sharingan's ability to be used by outsiders. Then I need more information, or, could you give me some advice? Akabane chuckled. The third Hokage looked at Akabane and remained silent for a long time. After a while, he said, you can explain that when outsiders use the Sharingan, their abilities will be greatly weakened, and the difficulty of evolution is dozens of times greater than that of the Uchiha clan. Chapter 69, Adaptation is not random fabrication. Clan leader, the third generation has interfered. When Uchiha-en returned, he didn't mention being ambushed by Akabane and almost experiencing a life-or-death situation. That's good. Uchiha Genkai breathed a sigh of relief, and his mind relaxed. The fact that the third Hokage intervened means that Konoha is not that extreme, and all of this is just Danzo's doing. But we can't let this go, or our family's prestige will be completely ruined. Uchiha-en solemnly replied. Of course. Next, we need to coerce the Kurama family and at the same time contact the third generation, implying that he should step in to resolve the conflict. As long as that kid isn't stupid, he'll take the opportunity to back down. Uchiha Genkai said. But Danzo and his gang are going too far. If one day even the Hokage... Uchiha-en was indignant, but before he could finish speaking, Uchiha Genkai raised his hand to stop him from continuing. Neither of them spoke. After a moment of silence, Uchiha Genkai continued, where can we go after leaving Konoha? Do you think it's only because this manga appeared that others are eyeing us? If there is no second Madara Uchiha, we will become the next Uzumaki clan if we leave Konoha. Uchiha Genkai said calmly. The Uzumaki clan? The third generation brought back 10 children from the land of whirlpools. I had someone investigate, and now the Uzumaki clan is facing extinction. He sighed as he said this, his tone growing increasingly heavy. What? An annihilation of the entire clan? What happened? Uchiha-en was utterly shocked. The Uzumaki clan had an excellent relationship with Konoha and was equally powerful. It was hard to believe that such a clan would face such a calamity. However, when Yuan Hai explained what he had learned, he understood. The common man is not guilty, but he is guilty of carrying a jade. Regardless of whether it appears in the manga, the other ninja villages all want the Sharingan. This issue itself has nothing to do with the manga, it's just that Akabane's drawing bluntly reveals it. He sighed, his mind even more confused. But at this moment, Uchiha Genkai suddenly smiled and said, actually, this matter might turn into a good thing. We can have Kurama Akabane write about the dangers and defects of Sharingan transplantation in a more serious way. Does this mean that everyone should understand that the cost of obtaining the Sharingan far outweighs the benefits? Uchiha-en said thoughtfully. That's right. Even if a caged bird steals the white eyes of a family that is separated from its members, it won't help, it will only cause trouble for the family. Uchiha Genkai couldn't help but laugh as he said this, we can use this publicity to tell others about our caged bird. Comics, if used well, can be a tool that benefits oneself. I want to meet that brat in Danzo. As Akabane left the Hokage building, he was still replaying the conversation in his mind. Page 59. Undoubtedly, the third Hokage had a deep understanding of the Sharingan, which is why he was able to say those words. Judging from the third generation statement, a reconciliation will be reached within a few days at most. Akabane wandered aimlessly through the streets. Starting with the second Hokage, the Hokage lineage suppressed the Uchiha clan in various ways, and after the Nine Tails attack, they began to work on annihilating the Uchiha. It can be said that the Hokage faction never trusted them, Akabane was simply going with the flow. Of course. Standing at the forefront of controversy always comes at a price. One advantage of this is that the Uchiha clan also follows the manga and can accumulate a large number of points. On the other hand, Danzo's willingness to take the blame indicates that he was tempted. If he starts researching this area, he can be blamed for Akabane obtaining the Sharingan in the future. But that's not enough. Akabane's mind raced as he pondered another question. Should the upcoming storyline involving the massacre of the entire family be modified or delayed? The mere Sharingan of a foreign race has already caused the Uchiha clan to jump up in anger. If the story of the entire clan being wiped out were to unfold, the Uchiha would probably be even more in uproar. As he pondered, he walked toward Danzo. However, not long after. Lord Danzo has ordered that today's training is cancelled. Please proceed to this location. The ninjas of the Root Squad? Akabane took the scroll, and Nakiji vanished instantly. He opened the scroll, which displayed a string of coded messages. He pondered the messages: Death Forest, Training Ground number 32. What do you mean? Could it be that Danzo is unhappy about being blamed and wants to train him as revenge? Impossible, that's too naive. That must be the Uchiha. Akabane took a deep breath. The only reason that could have led Danzo to cancel his trip at the last minute and agree to meet in such a remote location as the Death Forest is this. But what if it's a trap? He thought for a moment and created a shadow clone. Thank you for going there for me. The Forest of Death is a place fraught with danger, not to mention the Uchiha clan's current ambiguous stance. Going there like that would be like hanging your hat on Danzo's waist. If there is no danger, a shadow clone is enough to do the job. Ah. After responding, the clone quickly set off for the 32nd training ground in the Death Forest. In the Forest of Death, Danzo stood in the center, waiting silently. Lord Danzo, it's been a long time. Uchiha Genkai appeared. Where's that brat? Not yet. Danzo said calmly, what do you want to talk about by calling me? What else is there to talk about? We Uchiha are very interested in that kid's work. Uchiha Genkai smiled. Okay? Danzo frowned slightly, somewhat puzzled by his meaning. It's nothing, let's talk about it when the kid arrives. He leaned against the tree, and soon the two of them looked in the same direction. Coming. Sha sha. The sound of rustling leaves came, and the next second a figure quickly jumped down from the tree and landed between the two. My lords, I am late. Akabane glanced at the two of them, appearing calm on the surface, but a little puzzled in his heart. It's strange that the Uchiha clan went directly to Danzo instead of seeking out the third Hokage. It's all right. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Uchiha Genkai, and I am the head of the Uchiha clan. Yuan Hai smiled slightly, showing no signs of excitement. Hello, I am Kurama Akabane. Even if they are opponents for the time being, they still show the same courtesy. Akabane bowed slightly, noticing Danzo's expression. Clearly, this teacher had also received the meeting at the last minute. Since everyone's here, I'll get straight to the point. Kurama Akabane, I hope you will explain in the manga the price that outsiders pay for obtaining the Sharingan. Uchiha Genkai said. Akabane wondered to himself, the other party took the initiative to come to me just for this? Not too possible. He thought for a moment and replied with the same words, I don't know much about the Sharingan. Do you have any advice for me? The Sharingan is also called the Eye of the Mind. The factor that determines the power of the Sharingan is the power of the eye. We do not know the specifics of the eye power at the moment, but what we can be sure of is that even if outsiders obtain the Sharingan, it is very difficult for them to generate eye power. Uchiha Genkai said. That is to say, it's not just an eye, but also a bloodline evolution. It's one with the Uchiha bloodline. Outsiders can't use it. Even if they could, I think it would be a very special case, and the person who carried it must have paid a huge price. Danzo and Genkai exchanged questions and answers, then fell silent again. You want me to explain it like this in the comic? Akabane said thoughtfully. Even stories need to follow certain common sense. Adaptation is not about making things up. These messages will make your story more complete. As for how you draw it, that's your freedom. I just hope you can provide a reasonable explanation. Uchiha Genkai said kindly. I understand. Akabane looked at Danzo and finally nodded slightly. Uchiha Genkai's goal was still reconciliation, but the difference was that he chose to reveal these messages, letting Danzo judge the truth for himself. The second Hokage harbored deep hostility towards the Uchiha clan and had naturally conducted research on them. He believed Danzo possessed a certain level of discernment. In some respects, it is true. Sharingan transplantation has not been successful to date. Danzo pondered this in his heart, but in the end he said nothing and tacitly agreed to the agreement between the two parties. For Akabane, this was not just an agreement, but also a manifestation of goodwill, which is believed to be another reason why Uchiha Genkai arranged to meet with Akabane and Danzo. The Uchiha are not unable to discuss these matters. Chapter 70 The Book of the Ones. I have some matters to attend to within the clan, so I must take my leave now. Uchiha Genkai said with a smile. Walk slowly without sending. Danzo's expression remained unchanged, as if he was unaffected by the Sharingan's message. Yuan Hai bowed slightly and vanished in an instant. Teacher, do I still need to go to training? No need, let's dispel the clone. Danzo glanced at him and said irritably. Well, I'm just a low-ranking ninja, not some big shot like you. The clone makes a sarcastic comment. Danzo ignored him and vanished in an instant. The Akabane clones dissipated simultaneously, and the memories returned to the original body. On the streets of Konoha, the original owner immediately changed course. He had originally planned to go home and take a nap, but when he thought of Tsunade, he had no choice but to go to the comic book store again. A lot of people came to the shop to buy comics, but Tsunade was sitting in front of the door, lost in thought, so much so that she didn't even notice Akabane coming. Still not leaving? Oh. You're back. Tsunade stood up and immediately asked, so, what did the teacher say? He didn't say anything, he just asked me to put a patch on it. Akabane sat down and said. Patch? Tsunade thought about it for a long time but still couldn't understand what the word meant. It's just to supplement the settings. Akabane explained. When it comes to patching, the Book of the Master is indispensable, but the settings need to be slightly modified depending on the situation. He sat down and, without hesitation, began to draw Kakashi's portrait. This page needs to be added to the next volume, so it must be completed as soon as possible. Kakashi? Tsunade glanced at it, then stood behind and watched in astonishment. A minute or two later, Kakashi's black and white portrait appeared on the paper. His headband had moved up, revealing his right Sharingan. However, after drawing the portrait, Akabane put the paper away. Hey, what do you mean? Tsunade could imagine that this large blank space below definitely needed to be filled with something, so how could she not write anything now? I'm a little tired, I'll go back and rest for a while before I start drawing again. Akabane yawned as he spoke. You forgot, you woke me up really early today. What a stingy man. Tsunade grumbled in dissatisfaction, it's just climbing through the window this morning. I'll continue writing as long as I don't climb through the window anymore. Page 60. You. Tsunade clenched her fists, then took a few deep breaths and sneered, fine, I won't climb through the window then. I don't even bother. With that in mind, I'll reluctantly work overtime. Akabane unfolded the paper again and picked up his pen to continue writing. It started with a brief introduction by Kakashi, an elite jonin of Konoha, a former member of the Yambu. A 12-year-old jonin? That's an exaggerated claim. Tsunade exclaimed in surprise. Jonin are just titles. During wartime, the mortality rate of jonin is high, so the promotion rate is naturally high as well. Akabane replied with one sentence, and then continued writing. Next came a string of data, Ninjutsu 10, Taijutsu 9, Genjutsu 8. Tsunade didn't understand at first, but she quickly realized it after seeing the rest. 10 is estimated to be the highest point, the higher the number, the stronger the capability. Looking at the previous points, the ninja named Kakashi in the manga is almost omnipotent, with no weaknesses. Just as she was about to say that the setting was perverted, she saw the chakra data 5. 5? Are you kidding me? This chakra is excessive. Elite Jonin are almost all the top fighters in their villages, so it's ridiculous that such a ninja only has 5 chakra. It's no exaggeration to say that the Sharingan doesn't come without a price. Akabane continued writing annotations while explaining. The main reason for writing this section is to patch up the Sharingan for outsiders, so the issue of Kakashi's chakra is naturally of paramount importance. The Sharingan, also known as the Eye of the Mind, is closely related to the Uchiha bloodline and their spiritual will. Tsunade read through it word by word, and was shocked when she came to the end. These materials must have been stolen from the Uchiha's library. Because his teammate voluntarily donated it, the Sharingan transplant was successful, but since he doesn't have Uchiha blood, he has to pay a huge price to use the Sharingan. Akabane didn't write it too clearly, but it's precisely this ambiguity that makes it all the more thought-provoking. Tsunade fell into deep thought, then asked, the condition for awakening the Sharingan is voluntary, and his chakra is so low because of the Sharingan? Almost. Akabane added a final note, thank you to the Uchiha clan for their help with the Sharingan information. This information was given to you by the Uchiha clan? Tsunade was dumbfounded, finding it hard to believe. Yes, the Uchiha clan leader said it himself. Akabane smiled but did not explain in detail. He couldn't believe it when he first received the memories of his clone, but it was the truth. He hung the page on the drawing board to dry, and then handed it directly to Tsunade. What are you doing for me? Tsunade was stunned for a moment. The Senju clan is quite familiar with Yamano Izumi, could you please send this to me and tell him to expedite it and attach it to the last page? Akabane said frankly. Tsunade felt like vomiting blood upon hearing this. Regardless of whether she agreed or not, the paper would eventually end up in her hands. He sat in the chair, the paper hovering in his hand. Hey, take it. You. I'll deliver it for you, but I'm definitely climbing through your window. Tsunade took Kakashi's file page and sneered. My house has a door. Akabane was speechless. Could he really go back on his word? You think you can get up by going through the main gate? I don't care, I'm leaving. Tsunade waved her hand, ignoring her. She refused to admit that she had insomnia yesterday, so she got up early this morning to peek through the window and see who was in his room. Fine, whatever. I need to go back and catch up on my sleep. Unable to persuade him, Akabane had no choice but to give up. Anyway, it's not a big deal. Although Tsunade always makes him feel ashamed when she climbs in through the window, just like with women's clothing, the shame will disappear after a while. Tsunade used the body flicker technique and quickly disappeared from his sight. Akabane had intended to go home and actually go to sleep, but as he turned around, he suddenly realized Tsunade wasn't running in the direction of the Senju clan, was she? That direction leads to the factory. Is this idiot going to deliver it for me himself? He paused for a moment, realizing there was no need for that. For some reason, Akabane felt a pang of regret, he should have gone by himself. Young master, are you going back? Kurama Yunlang asked with some regret. What happened? Akabane looked around and found that quite a few people had gathered. They each had a comic book in their hands. When Akabane was called over, one of them asked, Lord Akabane, my child really likes your comics. Could you draw a poster for him? I'm willing to pay. He was just an ordinary person, not a ninja, and 100 taels was not a small amount for him. Akabane looked closely and saw that many people were like him, because they were ordinary people and dared not make any requests. Okay, but forget about the money. I'll only draw 10 pages, and I'll also select 10 copies to include a poster with each new comic. Chapter 71 The Will to Fight. 10. They exchanged glances, some tempted and some hesitant. There were 20 or 30 people in total, but could they really get one of only 10 tickets? Don't worry, I'll pick randomly, but of course, this gentleman will definitely get one today. Akabane pointed to the man who had spoken first, then sat down. What should I draw? He thought for a moment and decided to draw something he hadn't drawn before, which would be a good opportunity to practice. The first one was completed quickly. Here you go. Akabane gave the completed painting to the man who had spoken earlier. He took it and glanced at it, hesitated for a moment, and then couldn't help but ask, "Is this also a character from a comic book?" "It's not from the Ninja Chronicles, it's a new manga character I plan to draw. His name is Monkey D. Luffy." Akabane replied. Monkey D. Luffy? What a strange name, and the art style is so different too. He always felt the art style was weird, but then he thought about how it was free. Oh well, it's fine too. Soon, the second one, the third one. It was hard for everyone to accept the sudden change in art style, but the fact that it was free made the poster recipients very happy. Alright, the next batch of posters will be randomly included in the comics. Everyone can rely on their luck. Akabane stretched. Without a poster, the villagers who had gathered around quickly dispersed. "Young master, are you really going to release a new comic?" "Just to warm up. Working overtime is tiring enough." Akabane has no plans to draw any new manga recently. Sales channels haven't been established yet. Instead of spending his free time drawing One Piece, he might as well update more Naruto. He really couldn't understand any of that preheating stuff. However, after spending time together, he felt that it was most unlikely that Akabane would release a new manga in the near future. Unless the young master makes a breakthrough and can maintain two shadow clones working at the same time. Akabane carried his tools home and saw Kurama Chiaki bandaging the little girl inside the house. "Came back? How did you get injured? Are you all right?" Seeing the wound and blood, Akabane walked over and picked up the gauze from the table. "It's all because of your dad. He taught the child how to use a kunai, and as a result, Chingyue accidentally cut herself." Saki poked her head out of the kitchen and said, somewhat annoyed, "I asked my uncle to teach me." The little girl had begun to accept her family and her current family identity. Seeing Kurama Chiaki being scolded, she immediately spoke up. "Cough, it was an accident this time, I'll be more careful next time." "And next time?" Kurama Saki glared, his angry expression quite frightening. "I don't dare anymore." Kurama Chiaki decisively admitted defeat, while Uzumaki Saigetsu smiled so hard her eyes narrowed. The couple exchanged a glance and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Witnessing this scene, Akabane chuckled softly. Then, he looked at the semi-transparent panel and his eyes suddenly sharpened. The total price of the Vortex physique had decreased by 1 point. This is sufficient proof that the blood of the Vortex clan can lower the price. But, after testing each item, he found that his perception ability had decreased by 1 point. Because Whirlpool Clear Moon is a form of perception? Akabane sighed inwardly and put the gauze back. Even if you drain all of Whirlpool Chingyue's blood, it probably won't reduce her score by much. If he could obtain Mito Uzumaki's blood, he might be able to significantly reduce his score. After all, Mito Uzumaki's strength and physical development are the strongest in the Uzumaki clan, and her value is incomparable to that of Kiyotsuki Uzumaki. However, instead of trying to take advantage of her, it would be more worthwhile to focus on accumulating points. I have over 400 points now, and I can get some more. With the 4th book, I'll definitely be able to collect 1,000 points to exchange for one. Akabane put the tools aside and then sat down at the table to ponder. The little girl's hand was bandaged, and she was now quietly and attentively reading the 2nd volume. She had become even more interested in comics after arriving in Konoha. Like her, there were also children who lived with the Senju clan. Page 61. These children with the surname Uzumaki are now assigned to the few remaining households of the Senju clan, but every afternoon they gather in the courtyard of Mito Uzumaki. Of course. It wasn't about training in ninjutsu or practicing taijutsu, it was about a group of people reading comics together. Such as now. "Grandma, I've finished reading the 2nd book. Shall we read the 3rd book today?" "Manon, you finished reading it, but many children haven't, so we'll continue with the 2nd book this afternoon," Mito Uzumaki said gently and calmly. "But you're a team, understand?" In short, Nana Uzumaki swallowed back what he was about to say. Then, the comic books were handed out one by one, and everyone quietly began to read them. After watching for a while, one of the children asked, "Grandma, why is Sakura's academic performance so good, but she's not as good as Naruto in battle?" "Yeah, at least Naruto tried, but she just kept." Once someone started, the others couldn't help but share their opinions on the plot. Her control and theoretical knowledge are excellent, but she lacks the will to fight. She doesn't even know why she's fighting. Mito Uzumaki explained casually. Fighting spirit? A group of children had no idea what this was. They all looked at Mito Uzumaki, hoping she could explain. People always have a goal when they fight. For example, the people of Wachao village fight for their clan and their country. That's what Mito Uzumaki said. Does Grandma mean that Sakura has no target to fight? Some people seem to be deep in thought. Yes, she probably only has eyes for that little boy. Mito Uzumaki sighed. Although this is a comic book, such scenes do exist among ninjas, and are not uncommon. Oh, I see. So, what about you, Grandma? Mito Uzumaki sat in a chair, a look of reminiscence on her face. If given the opportunity, it might be for the Uzumaki clan, the Senju clan, or even for Konoha. But she knew very well that this might be too small. As the Ninetails Jinchuriki, she is very powerful, but because of her overwhelming strength, she attracts the attention of other ninja villages whenever she moves. Children, you must become stronger, but at the same time you must understand why you are fighting. Mito Uzumaki said seriously, don't let negative things affect you. The Uzumaki clan's physical prowess is undeniable, and the 10 children sent to Konoha were certainly handpicked. These children will undoubtedly become ninjas in the future, but the Uzumaki clan. Her heart was heavy. If the Uzumaki clan were to meet with misfortune, how many of these children would live in the shadow of hatred? Protect your family. Become strong. I want to become Hokage, just like Naruto. Idiot, we are the Uzumaki clan. Everyone started arguing again, and Mito Uzumaki covered her mouth and laughed, her gloom vanishing. Alright, everyone has finished reading book 2. Now you can start reading book 3. Chapter 72 Expanding Printing Production. They'll deliver it tonight. Are they being this efficient this time? Yes. Tsunade held the piece of paper, waving it around smugly. Stop shaking it, I'll give you this one too. Akabane sighed and took a drawing out of his pocket. What? Ugh. Tsunade covered her mouth in surprise, but quickly regained her composure after a moment. It was a portrait, depicting Tsunade as she looked right now. It's nothing, just a portrait. Akabane shrugged, paused for a moment, and then sincerely thanked him. Thank you for helping me deliver that page of paper. It's no big deal. I need to train my physical skills anyway. Tsunade happily put away the portrait. You guys are so hard-working, I need to work harder too. Akabane took out the tools. The 5th volume is still halfway done. Yamano Izumi Hiroshi delivered the goods today, and he also needs to finish the remaining part today. Okay, you're finally being diligent, never mind. Another shadow clone. Tsunade was speechless. She really shouldn't have had any expectations. However, the next second, she saw Akabane bring out a set of tools himself. You think I'd slack off? You're kidding, do you think I'd let you guess that easily? Akabane chuckled, pondered for a moment, and then began to draw. Okay, then I'll start training too. Tsunade was instantly full of energy. Even lazybones like this are starting to work hard, so what excuse do I have to be a couch potato? However, she deliberately ran far away, as she is not yet able to perfectly control the power of each punch. Boom! Upon hearing the voice, Akabane paused. The noise level has decreased significantly, Tsunade's control has improved rapidly. That makes sense. Without such control, how could one perfect the medical system and become the world's #1 medical ninja? Akabane sighed for a moment, then quickly began to draw. As evening approached, young master, Mr. Yamano's convoy has arrived. He has already printed the comics. I understand. Go to the clan and get someone to arrange for the comics to be put on the shelves. I'll take care of the publicity. Akabane had already learned the information from Tsunade, so it wasn't surprising. Kurama Yunlang responded, then looked at Akabane suspiciously, feeling that something seemed a little off. He walked and pondered. What's wrong? No matter how I think about it, something just doesn't seem right. By the way, something's not right that the young master is working so hard. Kurama Yunlang finally realized that in the past, the young master would only let his shadow clones do the work while he lay there leisurely, but today he actually drew comics himself. Aside from drawing posters, this was the first time he had ever seen anything like it. Tsunade, Mr. Yamano has arrived. I need to go and greet him, so I won't be able to keep you company. After dispelling his clone and putting away his manuscript, Akabane called out to Tsunade, who was still working hard on the hillside in the distance. Okay, I'm done too. Tsunade immediately stopped and began cleaning up the mess. I still need to finish compiling the 5th volume, so I'll leave now. It is good. Akabane hurriedly returned home, took out his previous sketches, and combined them with the woven fabric he had drawn this time. When I arrived at the comic shop, the layout and page numbers were already clearly marked. In front of the door, a group of people were busy at work. Even the factory manager, Izumi Hiroshi Yamano, was so busy that he personally helped unload the goods. Mr. Yamano, thank you and the workers for rushing to produce this batch of comics. Akabane stepped forward, bowed, and thanked him. The 4th volume was completed in just over a day, which shows how efficient these people are. This is thanks to His Majesty the Great. Yamano Izumi smiled and then explained to Akabane, His Majesty the daimyo heard about your situation from somewhere and mobilized a lot of manpower to allow me to expand production. Even the great name knows about my comics? Akabane's eyes lit up. Yes, His Majesty the Great said that your comics are a new cultural industry that should be encouraged. Shan Yechuan smiled brightly, his tone filled with gratitude. Thanks to your cooperation, our factory's printing production department has upgraded its equipment. That's great, let's go inside and have a proper talk. This news stirred Akabane's emotions. He pulled Shan Yequanhong and led him into the house. Although their age difference made their appearances seem incongruous, Yamano Izumi Hiroshi didn't find it strange at all and followed him inside to talk in detail. Mr. Yamano, have you inquired with the caravan? Akabane sat upright nervously. The 2 caravans agreed to cooperate, and one wanted to sell on their behalf once or twice to observe the situation. 3 caravans? Yamano Izumi-ko paused for a moment, then said somewhat apologetically, the time was too short, only 4 caravans passed through in total, so... No, I'm just so surprised that you were able to find 3 caravans at once. Akabane sincerely admired, may I ask, which areas are the 3 caravans responsible for trading in? One team goes to the land of snow, one goes to the land of rivers, and the team that is meant to observe usually goes to the land of iron. Izumi Hiroshi Yamano replied. Apart from the land of rivers, they are all relatively stable countries. Akabane seemed to be deep in thought. Well, actually, the land of rivers is quite peaceful. That's how it is so far.